Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I cannot believe, just looking at the chat now, I cannot believe how many of you have started without me. I think that's unfair, don't you? My God, there's 28 people who've been waiting. Geez, good evening, good afternoon, good morning. Let's see, we have Hans, we have C63, Andreas, founder Timless Capital. Welcome, it's so good to have you all here. Thomas Burnett, just scrolling through the chats. I'm going to try and connect. Tom Austin, I just saw that you were watching and it's 5 in the morning in Hong Kong at the moment. You guys are absolutely insane. Jeremiah from Illinois, Steve, Alexander, hi everyone. Thank you all for joining. This is going to be great. So the first stream went really well the other day and my watch is slow. Yeah, Lee Hawkins. I used the Apple system, might be a little bit off, I don't know. But today we're going to be talking about field watches, military watches, but then also what I learned is that the engagement was what made the difference. Having the live stream chat going on in the background made such a difference because we can just jump between topics, and I've got a whole load of watches to look at. Also have a preview or a premiere of what's coming out next week. It's going to be quite an interesting video. But can you guys hear me okay? Please let me know if the audio is good and if you can see this gorgeous little Smith's Everest on the screen. This is what I'm currently wearing on a undersized 18mm Phoenix G10 strap. So yeah, 11 p.m. in the UK. Yeah, that's it, founded Timless Capital. Is it Timless Capital or is it Timeless Capital? I need to know this. Should I just call you FTC from now on? Like, I don't know how we should... What is my poison this evening, Hans? I've gotten into a point where I'm drinking basically a double espresso of coffee since it's 11 o'clock, a blended whiskey, very poor, and a glass of water. So water, whiskey, coffee keeps me going. And I think that'll it'll help things going. Hi from Michigan, Peter. That's awesome. MT-Bone, everyone's in. So let's think. How should we start this? You guys can give me some questions about watches to look at, or we can just jump into catalogs. I'm opening up my Watches of Knightsbridge catalog that I tend to always refer to. It's almost like my cheat sheet. And there's a whole variety of watches to look at here. And since we're talking about field watches, they actually have a lot of field watches on offer. So we could look at these as well as talk about other things. So it'll be awesome. Matthew, Logan Hall, that is so cool. Timeless, okay, cool. I'll call you founder Timeless Capital. I won't call you FTC, that's cool. Or James is better. I'll call you James. Thank you. John, 73, Math, Mark P. Everyone's in, that's fantastic. Okay, so talking about military watches and field watches. I hope you guys enjoyed the video from earlier this week. It was a lot of fun to put together. It was quite a mouthful. Like, I've never had to do such an information dump in all my life, but it was well worth it. Seeing the timeline of all the watches go through was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to put together and see it in the end, you know? What are my thoughts on the CW field watch? Is that the Christopher Ward field watch? I'll have a look at that now. Thanks, Jeremiah. Lamania. Yeah, I just thought this is how they start their catalog with the field pieces. They got some really cool watches, CWC. Actually, there's a very good, before we get into this, there was a very good reply, a very good comment on the video from earlier this week. This the military video that I had. It was really good. I hope you can see this okay, but I'll just read it to you. I won't mention his name for his anonymity's sake, but it was very interesting because he was in the Navy during this time when I was talking about mil-spec watches. And his comment was that most of the instructors wore Rolex, didn't call them mil subs back then. So I'd imagine it was around about the 80s when he was in the Navy. So a few of us felt hard done with the constant cost cuts. G10 strap, 18mm on a CWC, was known as a pusser's strap, a corruption of purser, who is an officer on a ship who keeps the accounts, especially head steward on a passenger vessel. The G10 being a shortened version of a chit you had to fill in to get one. They were never referred to as NATO. This is a civvy term, and were all Admiralty grey by Phoenix in Wales, with a rare exception of black to suit the PVD shaky boat version. There were a few other watches that attempted to label and slap on at the time during, like, so talking about Tag Heuer and Certina. After Pulsars, Citizen Pro Masters came in with a few Aquilans. Very interesting. And he said G-Shocks were also worn topside, but weren't very popular with the bubble heads. So he was in the Navy, I would imagine, around the 80s. And it's interesting that his, I would imagine, commanding officers were wearing Rolex Milsubs at the time. And the younger guys were wearing these quartz pieces. Can you imagine how unfortunate it would be? Anyway, I'm just going to keep this comment here. I'll just minimize it, so maybe we can bring it up later. Anthony Bourdain's watches are currently up for auction at Bids Alive. Is this Phillips? I think Phillips are having an auction. I will have a pull and look at that just now. That should be cool. But yeah, let's give me some suggestions. Should we look up Anthony Bourdain's watches? Let's see, how best should we find it? I think Phillips had a whole section come up. I think I saw something about live stream. I don't know. I try and keep in touch with Instagram and everything on social media, but I'm quite, social media basically comes last compared to everything else. Let's see, 5 watches for sale. I don't know what these are. Cosmographs. I don't know. I don't even know what Anthony Bourdain's watch is that's on for sale. Is it? It's just a standard Datejust, or was it just a standard Oyster Perpetual? Let's see. I'm just checking out the comments. Bubblehead submarine crew. I don't actually know what the expression is, Matthew. I think it could easily be the guys who dove, who actually went into the water, since back in the day they were the guys that wore these big helmets. Anyway, it'd be nice if someone could possibly share a link for me to have a look, and I'll be able to pull up Anthony Bourdain's watches. Geneva watch auction. I'm guessing this is it, but if I have to register, I don't think they will. Oh, geez, I tell you, when it's not prepared, I'm useless with these things. I tell you what, I don't want to waste your time. I'd rather just leave the Smith's Everest on the screen. Dinky did a quick write-up. Should I look it up, Peter? Thanks for that. Let's have a look, just for all of our sakes. Dinky does seem to always get on top of every discussion. Here we go. Action report. His collection is up for sale. Sweet. Hope you guys can see this okay. I'll try and pull it in a bit more. So, talking watches. So this, from what I've heard, this is one of his most popular watches. He always wore this Datejust, the blue dial. And let's talk about Marlon Brando's GMT Master. Fascinating story. Made a video about that a while ago. It was a nice history. There it is. So this is his Datejust that he seemed to have worn practically everywhere. I don't know if this was his first watch, but let's have a look. These are some of his Rolexes. That's very slick. And yeah, I haven't done any research into this. Apologies, everyone. View all the watches right here. Thank you for that. There's a suggestion. Jimmy, thank you for giving me that. Oh, wow. Here are all the listings. Are these all of the watches for auction? That is fantastic. 8 watches. Okay, well, let's have a look at them. Let's have a look. Can I open it up in a tab and somehow, let's see. No, you can't. Okay, I'm going to have to individually open these up. That should be a ball ache. Oh, geez. Okay, so he's got a vintage Rolex. Let me know if you're keen on seeing these. If you'd like me to cut it, I will do that. But here are the set of watches. He's got 8 watches that are going up. And this first vintage Rolex looks like quite a charm. Looks like an early 1900s piece. This does look very much like a field watch in a way. Let's have a look. Rob Smith, good evening. Okay, so having a look at this piece with wire lugs, I would imagine it's a very early 1900s piece, presented to H.D. Bobbitt. Very interesting. Birmingham. Okay. Let's see if there's any background information about it. Inherited from his father. Okay. So they don't give you circa 1930. Okay, that's okay. Pretty cool. But this is the watch that seems to be the talk of the town, which is the so-called watch that he always used to wear, if I'm not mistaken. Just a standard Oyster Perpetual, the date. Love the blue dial, though. I think these blue dial watches are awesome. And it's not exactly old. It's quite a new piece with modern clasp and everything else. I don't know why they would have to highlight all the stuff like the clasp and everything else. Martin, welcome. Crappy Luxury, good evening. BS, this is so cool. Good evening, everyone. It's 85 of you watching at the moment, and that's superb. If I'm boring you with this, just if you're new and you just arrived, Anthony Bourdain's watch collection has come up and is on sale thanks to Phillips. Thank you to Timeless Capital, James, for suggesting it. So have a look at these. Let's see if I can get out of this now. How do I do that? No. Tell you what. Now I can't get out of this image. What a joy. There's a little X in the corner. Fantastic. So a simple little date just is the next piece. Then he's got a little Calatrava. This is always cool. Oh, geez. Going to pull it up. We're going to get this sorted out eventually. Let's see. So it's a standard Calatrava of his. These are really cool. I don't know. These are quite interesting pieces because they are very old-fashioned visually. You know, they don't exactly carry over the charm that a lot of the more modern pieces have nowadays. I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts on this reference. What is the reference again? It's a 5212. No, it's not. What is it? I can never, me and Patek references. I'm not one of the best. Okay, let's get back to the other watches on auction. Pocketwatch. I don't know if anyone's keen on pocket watches. Smoky Bear wristwatch. This looks like some kind of pilot watch of some sort. Very interesting, strange collection. You know, do these watches sum up his persona? A 5119 Calatrava. I think that's a Cheetah. You know, I'm by no means a chef watcher. I never used to watch many cooking shows. I watch the occasional Master Chef and stuff, but I don't personally know Anthony Bourdain. I never actually followed his shows, so it's pretty bad of me. Poor taste, but anyway. Then he's got a standard, very modern pieces. He has just the standard Monaco, automatic reference. Very strange collection. I wouldn't have expected these to be his kind of watches. Wasn't there talk about him owning an Audemars Piguet, if I'm not mistaken? I don't know. The old saying goes, I thought I just saw a comment, the man makes the watch, not the watch makes the man. We've got a ball watch now. That's pretty cool. I like that. That's very militaristic in a way. Let's see the rest of the comment. We've got Reed Cruikshank. Thank you for the comment, sir. Lawrence. Man makes watches, not watches make a man. Yeah, exactly. It's down to the person. Let's see. Very interesting looking piece. I have never been one to follow ball watches, so if anyone has any or is used to them. Anyway, very cool. I like the contrast. It reminds me of a Sin in many ways. Some of his watches were already sold on Wednesday. Thank you, James, for that. Yeah, this is all new to me. I haven't rehearsed or looked at any of this at all. And some of the prices, I mean, they expect this, the current bid for this Panerai is at $9,000. Just a standard radio mirror. That's crazy. Because, I mean, we know what the value of these are like. This must have been a very frequent wearer. I mean, we've got some rust on the surface here on the side of the case. See if I can zoom in. We've got some surface tarnishing, or maybe that's just grime. Can't be rust. So this must have been one of his popular wearing watches, I'm sure. Very cool. Oh, geez. Sorry, guys. I'm just warming up here. This is the first few minutes of the show, so I'm just getting myself into the show. But that's it. There's 8 watches, and that seems to be everything for the time being. 8 items. Yeah, it's a pity that his other watches didn't go. Logan Goldberg likes holding his bull watches. Yeah, I've heard he's a big fan of them. Pan was his everyday on camera. Thank you for that. Okay, so I don't know, where should we go from here? Let's see. You can open up Panerai, might as well. Let's just open up a Google page on Panerai and just have a look at a whole range of watches. Since he's talking about military and everything else, I think that might be a cool addition. What are your thoughts on Panerai? It's crazy how they've changed over the last few years. I mean, I wasn't exactly into watches in the 90s, but I mean, these were apparently talk of the town back then. So it's pretty crazy. Replace the espresso with wine. No, Hans, I've got to tone it down. Whiskey works better with me. Whiskey and coffee seem to like be the Red Bull for me to keep me going. Anyway, 1968 Smiths, Freddie Turner. I haven't replied to your email. I'm very sorry. But that photo of your W10 and all the pieces together is gorgeous. Absolutely love them. Yeah, so it seems like, I'm just seeing a comment, Peter Wong, chefs seem to like Panerais. This was the in thing in the 90s, as far as I know. But it's strange how they've dipped so much. Question is, will they come back? I mean, there's one reference. There's a 40mm reference that I really like. I don't know the name, the serial number, but it has it's these white dial models. Here's an example. Here's a PAM 00050. I think in 40mm, they still command a lot of presence. Here's a forum photo. When they get to 45, etc., it gets a little bit ridiculous, personally. But I think 40 mils, a spinner watch like this, it looks fantastic. The wrist presence is there, but it's not overly in your face. You know, it's still pretty subtle, but it is definitely a watch that is open to people's opinions. A lot of people don't like them. What's the water resistance? I have no idea. 40-hour power reserve. I would imagine, since it has this fancy, actually, you know, in reality, when it comes to water resistance, Dan, 100 meters water resistance is more than enough for any kind of wearing experience. I would imagine it's probably about 200 or 300. But when they claim 300, generally the watch can go a lot deeper than that. So it's kind of, you know, irrelevant in the sense of things. Only the Rock can pull them off. Yeah, Hans, that's it. I think every collector has been a Panerai fan at some point. I was for a long time assuming a large collection of not just watches, but hundreds of straps. Yeah, that's it, James. These watches are strap monsters. They love straps. Anyway, since we're on Panerai, I'm just going to jump to field watches. We're going to keep this subject in and around field watches. And just for all the new people joining, this is what I'm wearing this evening. It's a little Smith's Everest. I'd love to be a spokesperson for the brand because I just love Smiths. The history is fantastic. I can't wait to make a video about them. And this is it's a fantastic homage because, as we know, Smiths with their history going up Everest, such a cool story. And to sort of pay homage to that, they decided to recreate a 1016 in that format, sort of like playing off the riffs of Rolex. I think it looks so good. This is a undersized 18mm Phoenix NATO strap. And it has to be done. You have to have 18mm and you have to have Admiralty Grey to go with it. It looks so cool. And it's a 36mm watch, so it just wears like a glove. I didn't take any wrist shots of it, but so awesome. And it has all of the modern components you'd ever want. Sapphire crystal, anti-reflective coating, C3 Luminova. It's too cool. No, I haven't approached Smiths, James. I haven't actually. What's happened is they've been bought out by Time Factors, if I'm not mistaken. And I was just browsing them the other day. Oops. Don't open Google Chrome. I need to remind myself. I'll just open up a new tab and show you this. So what they're doing at the moment is they are sort of creating homages to their older pieces. If you saw my military-related video I did the other day, I talked about a whole range of watches. And one of the famous watches that Smiths produced in tandem with the IWC Mark 11 was the W10 or the G10. I can never get it right. Damn it. This is basically an homage to the old school pieces. And these are great. This is a manual wind ETA, 36 mils. Smiths are too cool. They really are cool. And of course, there's someone in the chat, Freddie Turner. He has it's a W10. Freddie Turner has a W10. You can still find them around. And here it is on a 7.5-inch wrist. It's just gorgeous. I think it's so cool. I'm really keen. If I can put some money aside, I would love to get myself one of these pieces. So Smiths are great. I can't wait to look at the history. If I just look at vintage pieces, they offered so much back in the day. And just as a highlight to what they achieved, basically in the late 40s, early 50s, come on, Smiths vintage watch. Come on, Google, you can help me here, right? In the late 40s, early 50s, they'd never been in-house manufacturers until they finally became in-house manufacturers. They sourced Swiss watchmakers to arrive in the UK. And that's why they could officially stamp it made in England. And awesome story. And during that time, that whole heyday period, they handed out a watch to Hillary to wear up Everest. got lots of popularity from that, and that basically propelled them to a point where they were able to produce these mil-spec pieces. And seeing this in tandem with the IWC Mark 11, let's have a look. Let's pull it up. I still think the Mark 11 executed it better. They're very similar watches. Oh God, that's so beautiful. I love the presence of this watch on the wrist. Can you get better than that? I have to ask. The deluxes are going up in prices. Very interesting, Hans. Now, please recommend. Oh, geez. Wow. Thank you, Amin. Thank you so much for my W10. That is, I really appreciate it. Thank you for the super chat. ZN, IDGuy, can you please recommend a Rolex GMT homage? I'll have to think about it. I'll have to think about a good example for you, because in the back of my mind, I will piece it through and I'll think of something for you. But anyway, going back to this was the IWC, and it was basically brought out in tandem with the Smith's W10. Stunning looking pieces. And like I said, the hallmarks were all there. We had the triangle, the arrowhead hallmark, the tritium hallmark. What I love the most about these IWC pieces. If, for example, if I was able to create some kind of partnership with Smiths, as it is now, I would love to collaborate and basically create a recreation of this IWC Mark 11 with the Smiths branding on it, possibly with a manual wind ETA, just down to the T, exact design language. It is such a charming watch, and they've evolved the brand since. They've brought out Mark 15s and everything else, but I still think that the charm of the Mark 11 just pulls you in a little bit more. I love it. The one thing that also grabs me is the hour hand. How that hour hand's actually been severed off, and it's almost like a square. It's so interesting. Sorry, 73 Math. Check out the Expedition Smith's Everest. Okay, let's have a look at that guy. This is cool. So anyway, please, by all means, look up vintage Smith's watches, because they're all over the place and they're still available. This is actually it, I think. This is the Everest, one of the Everest pieces. It's a deluxe. This is what he wore up Everest, Hillary and the group. I think this is what you're recommending. If it's an expedition watch, this is what the team wore, if I'm not mistaken. Chili Prepper, Tudor for GMT, absolutely. Andy K, how's it? Welcome to the show. It's awesome. So this pretty much looks like the watch. Let me just type in Everest just to be sure. But that looks like the deluxe that he wore. Yeah, it is. There we go. Here's an example. 1953, basically made in J.W. Benson. Very similar. You had manufacturers vying for the position back in the day. Yeah, this is the watch. It's so charming. I think it's great. It's really cool. It's amazing. It's got such a cool history. If you want one vintage watch to wear, you might as well. Dan Radke, you're doing the live streams wrong. You need to be telling the people that it's hard and that money will make it better. Then you just tell money to buy Rolex whilst wearing 4 Pateks. Yeah, Dan Radke, thank you so much for the super chat. No, I want to keep this as educational as possible. Life is hard. We all have our ups and downs. It's down to content. Content is key at the end of the day. I love, for this whole period for me, is I can sit back, relax, chat about all sorts of bizarre watches. It's a nice recap for the week, But thank you, Dan. Thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. Mark 11 is one of my all-time favorite designs. I mean, I absolutely agree. It's really one of those golden era pieces of the time. It's such a charming piece. And they are going for crazy money nowadays. It's quite sad, because it's bizarre. When you talk about field watches and what they were and what they meant, they really were just tools to be used with no I understand exactly, Tom. There was no charm or love put into these watches. They were just made to be used as tools. What I love so much about this watch especially is that when it was introduced, it almost had that amalgamation of a field watch and a Flieger together. I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts on that. I kind of always put it as, in the back of my mind, one of the greatest amalgamations of a Flieger and a field watch. And this basically set the foundation for field watches to carry on. You could argue that the Dirty Dozen probably did, and I'll pull up Dirty Dozen watches because they're always charming to look at. A Dirty Dozen Omega, or whatever that is, talking about diet and food. Geez, that's a topic for another day. If you like to talk about diet, we can do that too. But Oops. Let's see. Let's pull up a nice, Longines. Fascinating. I mean, what's interesting is how these watches were contracted at the time. You had Dauphine hands on Longines, and then you had the likes of Amigas, and it's just amazing. They were all given the same brief. This is what always fascinates me, is when you give a company the same brief and the result, arrives at the same point, but all differently executed. And here's just a snapshot of all 12 of them together. It's too cool. I'm sure some of you guys in the chat probably have one of these, like an Amiga or IWC or whatever else. Founded Simless Capital. It's time to get the super chats flowing. Thank you so much for the super chat. I really, I appreciate it so much. It's such a pleasure bringing this out for you guys. Honestly, I'm learning so much doing this as well. I love talking about the design of watches. I love design. I hope to really bring design into the content in the future. And speaking of which, once we get an hour into this, it's already almost been half an hour, which is unreal. I'm going to show you a little premiere image of what is coming out next week. It's going to be too cool. I'm actually going to be addressing design with watches a little bit more of a personal touch overall. So if I'm not mistaken, these Omegas are some of the most desired of the Dirty Dozen. And I mean, what is not to like about it? It's too cool. It's gorgeous. Anyway, let's see. IWC 11 and the 15 have superb hands. Yeah, it's too cool. So really, we see the development. Another watch that is really a charming piece is not the Hamilton W10. I mean, that's cool, but the Mark 11. They also called it a Mark 11, if I'm not mistaken. And here's a JLC. See what was happening during this time? Everyone was trying their best to sort of vie for position. How's ketogenic helped your life? Cheetown, thank you for the super chat. Ketogenic diet. Oh, geez, we can get onto that story for a long. Okay, where to begin? It's. I wouldn't call it a diet. When it comes to diets, it's all about lifestyle. I hate the thought of going on something that's going to last for a couple of weeks, a couple of months. You see a few results, but you can't stick to it. With anything in life, it's all about sticking to it. And the ketogenic, the way I've been living, when it comes to, what I eat, 3 or 4 eggs a day, generally have meats in the evenings as well, couple it with vegetables and all the rest. Here's the Hamilton I was talking about. Why am I getting bags and Michael Kors and stuff? It's wonderful. Yeah, it's fantastic. Ketogenics for me, when it comes to working out and just having energy, excess energy all day. You're never exhausted. You're never tired. Oh, geez, there's so much. We could change the topic from watches to diets, and I could give it all to you. But once you learn the foundations about what we were like thousands of years ago, living in caves, hunter-gatherers, there's a lot of history behind that. And if you understand how your body works, you feel so much more confident. You don't have to worry about sickness. If you know that saturated fat is so important for the brain, for the functioning of the brain, cholesterol, all of this is a lie. I mean, what you've been told, it's a long story. It's a really long story, but cholesterol is not bad. Cholesterol is that when someone dies of heart attack, when your arteries fill up, can't be talking about diets on this. It's going to take all night. Send me an email. I haven't on my about section on my channel, and we can chat about this at length if you like. But no refined grains, cut out carbohydrates, sugars. Your body makes glucose itself. If it needs glucose, it'll make it. You don't have to feed yourself glucose at all. I don't know. It's very difficult to sway people's opinions on things because everyone has preconceived notion, but there's all sorts of things to cover. We talk about pancreas and heart, lungs, brain. Think about your brain. Your brain is pretty much 100% fat, and lots of hunter-gatherers wore long jeans. Thank you, Crappy Luxury. That's a brilliant piece of insight there. Okay, so we aren't designed to eat. It's a long history, and of course, different cultures have eaten different diets for generations. Very important to also highlight. We talk about the East and the fact that they've been eating rice. Their gut bacteria has developed over the years. For someone following a Western diet, suddenly to switch to vegetables and not understand what's going on, that's the problem. Your gut has to kind of like wake up to the fact that you are following the diet. It's a long, long story, but we can have a stream all about diet if you want. I'll just call it ketogenic diet, and we can proteins, omega acids, sugars, slow release carbohydrates are perfectly fine. Yeah, geez, there's so much to go into, guys. But really, if you'd like to know some information about dieting, look up ketogenic diet. When it comes to insulin levels, when it comes to what's the term? Carbohydrate intolerance, that's a big one. Insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is the #1 driving force when it comes to this diet. When your body can't actually understand that there's a barrier between what you're putting into it and anyway, I'm getting mixed up here. I'm looking at IWCs and I'm looking at the chats, and this sticks to watches. Yeah, BAs, that's good. I'm going to stick to watches. Okay, so I was trying to get to this Hamilton Mark 11, but it's very difficult to find a goodie. IWC again. So if I'm not mistaken, these Hamilton Mark 11s were brought out in very few numbers. And it pretty much was, it's interesting because it almost established the next step, which was the W10 that we all know. And I mean, this is also, it's too cool. I mean, this is what the thumbnail of the video was. Thomas Bourdain, back to watches, exactly. Anyway, so love this watch, love the layout, love the numerals. The case is also, it's got such a character to it. And I don't even know what the size of these pieces are. I would imagine probably about 38 mils, but this bigger case upgrades the presence. Thomas, thank you so much for the super chat, man. I really appreciate it. You are the living legend on all of these watch pages. Thomas Burnett and I have been chatting so much on email, and I have been neglecting emails for the last week, which I really apologize. I need to review Thomas's collection. He's got an awesome collection, guys. Just to let you know, he has Milgauss and Panerai, and it's too cool. So I'm going to be covering your collection, Thomas. Promise. And he just got a vintage Amiga. Let me actually bring it up, Thomas. Can you give me the reference of your Amiga that you just picked up? It's a baby Proploff, if I remember right. Check this out. I've got some real vintage charm with this little guy on a shark mesh. This looks cool. Check out on the bracelet. I mean, these pieces, it's fascinating how the 70s aesthetic stuck over time. It's a charming little watch. Really think it's cool. Nice character. Let's see. David Coffey, luxury watches help you lose weight because you can't afford to eat. Oh, exactly. And I mean, that's one thing you can factor in. You stick to eating pretty basic, boring foods like eggs. And then, I don't have to worry so much about preparing meals, Keto was designed for epilepsy. That's exactly it, Giuseppe. That's the story. It's an amazing, it's changed my life, my family's life. I mean, geez, if I want to get personal, my old man has cystic fibrosis. Don't know if you know what that is. He had a bilateral lung transplant 10 years ago. And after the surgery, if you don't know what cystic fibrosis is, it's a death sentence. After the surgery, he basically doubled in weight because of the medication he was taking stopped his pancreas from working. And because of that, put on weight. The excess sugar in your body, your insulin, they overspike you with insulin, so your body doesn't know what to do. Went on the ketogenic diet and hasn't missed a day since. Completely different change. Watches are a healthy addiction, Matt. I tell you, watches to me, in my field, when it comes to industrial design and watches, I think what pulls me to watches so much is that they're products that don't age. They don't have the built-in obsolescence. The word obsolescence doesn't factor in at all. And I think that is so important with products nowadays. We see how cheap everything's being made. And, these things, on the other hand, this watch could have been through the Falklands War, for example, could have been through all sorts of things. Probably not. I mean, in the 60s, I don't know so much about the history back in the day, but, these watches can tell a hell of a story. They still work perfectly. Just need a little bit of lubrication, a little bit of a polish and clean. The thing works perfectly. And there are very few products around nowadays that have that kind of mainstay nowadays. 73 Math. Hey, IDGuy. Great content. I'm interested to know your opinion on the new Smith's Everest expedition on the Time Factors website. Let's have a look. What I'll do is I'll just pull up a tab up. There should be some Everest Expedition. Let's see. Anything else? PRS 25W. PRS 25W. Oh, with a white dial. Yes, they have some interesting things there. The white dial, I don't know if it appeals to me as much. Here's an example. Okay. I do dig the rivet bracelet. Oh, I see what they did. That's interesting. Okay, so they've taken the 36mm case that they used for the give me a big picture, please. Come on, guys. Full screen. Come on. This is what I love. I'm just going to go to the Time Factors website and pull it up. So this is the Time Factors page where you can get all these Smiths pieces. Here's the 36mm. But they basically have all kinds of little homages. Here's an example, homage to the Willard Seiko. But this little guy, it looks like they've taken the deluxe styling and they've made it into, I kind of dig it, you know. I love the rivet bracelets. Me and rivet bracelets are always winners together. Oh, geez. The zoom function on this mouse. They tell me it's a magic mouse, but who's kidding? I like the idea, the concept behind taking vintage. I'm a sucker for vintage homage watches. And this idea of taking the deluxe, very much so, with the standard layout and putting it into a modern case, I think that's too cool. The Zodiac Super Seawolf. You asked me that question last week, I think, Cheeton. I'm going to be making a video all about Zodiac because they have, in comparison to Blancpain, they have such a similar history in many ways. And what I do like is their color choices. So I'll pull that up now. Answering the question. Who was the one that asked me this question? Sorry, the chats are going mad. Who asked me the question? Damn it. The chats are just disappearing. I wish I could like pause them. Anyway, my thoughts on this. I think it's too cool that they can bring back these vintage pieces with a modern case, modern movement. 24 jewels. I'm pretty sure this is just a manual wind ETA. Charming little piece. I love the cream dial. I don't know if it'll be one for me though, personally. I much prefer something a little bit simpler. On a leather strap, it looks great, but on a bracelet, I don't know. It's a little bit of a clash in a few places. Zodiac Super Seawolf. Since we're talking about military pieces, let me just open up Zodiac vintage watches because they had some awesome pieces. The main character was the whole charm behind the name were these plots. These almost like shark teeth plots. Hope you can see this okay. Actually, that's a better picture. So this is pretty much one of the first official dive watches from back in the day. Forgotten Glory, that's the title of this forum page. Zodiac has such an amazing history. In tandem with Blancpain, they were used by military, they were used all over the world as functioning watches, dive watches, in a time when dive watches weren't even a thing. You know, they were still trying to experiment. A lot of these watches still have very dress formats to them. But I just love the vintage rivet bracelets and everything else. This is such a gorgeous little watch. And like I said, in tandem with Blancpain and their watches, they did some pretty amazing things. They were pioneers. They were the pioneers of dive watches back in the day. Just trying to keep up these chats. Sorry, guys. SEMA World War I trench watch with a porcelain dial. Wow, that's awesome, Clive. Welcome. Thank you again for joining us, Clive. You sent me an email, Clive, and I'm sorry I haven't gotten back to you. I haven't replied to any emails this week, and I feel very bad about it. Anyway, gotta go. Giuseppe, thank you for joining me. Thank you so much. The stream is going to go on until 1 in the morning here, so another hour and 25 minutes or so. I found the last half an hour of the stream last week was a little bit extreme and I was losing it. Depends how it goes. You know, it depends if the chat keeps going and the suggestions keep coming. It's totally unfair. The Blancpain serial killer never got the attention that the Zodiac one did. Yeah, exactly, Clive. But it's yeah, such a cool history. Really cool history. I love these pieces. And just pulling up Blancpain, we're keeping to the theme of military watches and mil-spec. How can you not like that piece? When you think about the history and where these watches came from, it's fascinating to see that these watches pretty much set the foundation. Crazy, bizarre-looking lug design, huge bezel, great emphasis on the Bakelite bezel. The 12, 3, 6, and 9, that's very old school. And this was an aqualung. They didn't call it a 50 fathoms. I think this was the precursor to the 50 fathoms, if I'm not mistaken. I have a few write-ups that I'm working on with these pieces. Also love the no radiation sign. I mean, that is just such a character. Anyway, checking out the rest of the comments. See you guys. Lawrence, thank you for joining. Thank you so much for joining. Let's see. Hodinkee bathyscaphe is influenced by that. You know, the bathyscaphe is a watch that I really, really don't like. I don't know if anyone owns them, but the bathyscaphe is the old school bathyscaphe. Fun fact, the original bathyscaphe was actually the influencer for Seiko's first dive watch. And if I just pull it up, let's see if I can spell it right. Bathyscaphe. Here we go. So, I mean, you look at this and you think, wow, that looks very much like a 70s style Seiko. And what is the reference? There's a 73 involved with the Seiko diver, but this was the influencer. This watch looks great. I think it looks terrific. The modern bathyscaphe, on the other hand, it's a disaster. Oh, here we go. Here's Hodinkee's 50 fathoms. I think well, put it this way, I think it's much better than the common bathyscaphe. The story is behind them is that they were made basically like Rolex's Tudor variants. They were brought out to sell these watches because the standard 50 fathoms are very expensive. And if I just pull up the bathyscaphe, the modern one, this piece just doesn't do it for me in the slightest. And it's, once again, down to proportions, the indices on the dial, the layout. I like the needle hands, but why would you have such tiny little baton? It's a dive watch we're talking about here, you know? And the watch measures to be something like 42 mils. It's bizarre. I had a write-up started about this watch, but I just lost a little bit of inspiration and I haven't finished it. But yeah, the bathyscaphe really is a fail in my mind. The Hodinkee one looks fantastic. They did a great job. I mean, it's so easy. This is what I don't like about a lot of these reissues, these limited editions, is that take the easy approach. Just get rid of the date and add some faux patina. This was basically just transplanting a dial across, you know. But it's nice. The size is nice. Scale's cool. But then we jump back to here's another example of a bathyscaphe. This is a Murus. I'm guessing this was something that was made in and around the same time. But we jump back to the original, if I can. Of course, Google won't help me here. Oh dear, I have to type it back in. Google seems to change their format every week, the way they arrange their images. And when you look at these pieces in contrast, I mean, you can't go, because there's so little to it, you can't go wrong. Sword hands, clean layout, love the fully graduated bezel. It's awesome. Okay, I'm missing a lot of these comments. Apologies, guys. Good old poison tritium. Yeah, it's too awesome. Truth feels guilty. Thank you for joining. Scottish Watches. Good evening, Scottish Watches. Awesome to have you guys here. Please give me some more suggestions on pieces to look at, whether it's mil-spec, whether it's just questions in general about, I don't know, Rolex or Tudor or whatever you like. The engagement was what made it so entertaining last week. We were able to just riff of all sorts of things. So let's think, what other watches can we look at? What I'll do is I will pull up my go-to watches of Knightsbridge page, since this seems to be the case. And for those of you who have just arrived, what's so cool about watches of Knightsbridge is that they have these catalogs as PDFs that you can download. And they pretty much have all the watches that you would want to see. And for our sake, talking about field watches and mil-specs, they have a nice selection. Here's an example of a Hamilton. They called this the Mark 11, very much in tandem with the IWC Mark 11 of the time. And here's a JLC, and here's just a standard IWC. Anyway, lovely Longines three-hander for the RAF. It's a really cool, amazing history. I'll actually pull that up. There was one watch that really stood out to me. And if you haven't seen the military video that I did, I mentioned An Ordain as a big help, because the 3-part article that I read pretty much had everything I would need to basically form this extended timeline. What was it? It was called the CK2129 from Amiga. How cool is this watch? Now, the story behind this is that it was worn by Tom Hardy, I think, in what was the film? Dunkirk. But these all were watches issued to the RAF during the Second World War. And I mean, this thing is just stunning. Check out that bezel. I might be wrong, but this could be one of the first timing bezels that these watches were given. And it looks too cool. And basically what happened was it was just a fatter case. The actual watch that was so popular was a Longines. And I can't remember the reference to save my life. I think it's the Longines 2, oh geez. I'll just say RAF. I'm sure it'll come up. There we go. So this was basically the standard watch that was pushed out at the time. This might be a re-edition for all I know. But while the troops were wearing the Dirty Dozen, the standard, almost mass-produced pieces, RAF were given either Longines pieces or this fancy Amiga CK. It's called a CK2129, if you'd like to look it up. This one's been beaten to hell, but it's too cool. I might be completely wrong about the bezel, but pretty awesome story if we think about just where watches went after this. And this is during the 40s, you know, late 30s, early 40s. Crazy story. Longines Heritage Military 1938 Chronograph. Let's have a look, Crappy. Thank you for the suggestion. Longines Heritage Chronograph. There's what are the 1940s? 1938. Let's go. Let's pull it up. I mean, these were awesome. I'm a sucker for watches that are military, you know, reissues, recreations of vintage pieces. I think they're too cool. If you want that charm that you can actually wear on a daily basis and not have to worry about tritium falling out or anything else, they're too cool. And they have a whole, I mean, I know Longines are big on their reissues. I'm pretty sure they created or they recreated a pocket watch that I was really keen on the other day. Let's see, it was 1912 or something, not pocket watch, trench watch. And it was a reissue. There's so many. I know the watch wrangler himself is online talking about Signal Corps. This is, they called it the 1918, and they basically just reissued these pieces. I think they're too cool. The size is great. Don't know so much about the lugs and integration when it comes to wearing it, but really charming. I dig it. Seiko Gen 1, great chronograph. Yeah, I didn't actually, Thomas, I didn't specify it too much because I had so many other watches to write about. I had to give them little paragraphs, you know. But the movement in those Gen 1s were insanely accurate. They were one of the most accurate movements ever made at the time. Apparently, they had an accuracy of something like 1 second or something crazy. Let's see. Founded Timless Capital. I know what the Longines Dirty Dozen World War II watch is now. My daughter and I use to buy these in flea markets. Yeah, exactly. I mean, nowadays they are, if you look on eBay, just type in Dirty Dozen watches on eBay, it's bizarre just how expensive they are. Come on. They've all gone up in ridiculous prices. And one of the most popular, might be wrong, but is the Amiga. I mean, Longines also have a killer. Love the Dauphine style hand. It looks so great. But again, it's the question of, could you wear these and feel okay with it? You know, the tritium could easily fall out. This is probably radium back in the day. Excuse me. World War II Seiko pilot watches. Very nice question. Thank you, Cheetan. Let's have a look. Let's see. World War II Seiko pilots. Just, guys, ask me any kind of question, whether it's related to your collection, if you'd like to get a piece, if you like to have my compare and contrasting. Hell, that looks awesome. Talk about a roulette table. How cool is that? So this is the watch that was made for Japanese pilots during the Second World War. Don't know how long I'm surprised they had many of them because of what the pilots resorted to do back then. Gorgeous looking watch though, right? Love the big onion style crown. That's too cool. Elgin and Waltham, kamikaze watches, exactly. Yeah, that's it. I'm pretty sure there's very few of these. I don't know. I don't know the history. Now, when it comes to history, I'm good with some parts, but other parts, and I remember these. I remember these were very popular. These were basically the standard watches that the grunts on the ground would be wearing. And I remember watching a video actually of this watch being looked at. Crazy. They had these waterproof or these water resistant cases, and the movement would the watch would just be stuck in there, and they'd wear bunt straps. Too cool. Anyway, a lot of them may be in Pearl Harbor. Yeah, that's it, BS. Probably at the bottom. Swiss Army is my EDC. I want to look up Victorinox just now, actually, because that's a brand that I need to cover. We're talking about military watches and everything else. It'll be interesting to see what the Swiss military are given. That'd be cool to look at. But this is the Seiko watch that the pilots used to wear. Unreal. Anyway, so Seiko totally got unfair advantage of watching the radio shooting. Oh, Clive, that was a low blow. Oh dear. Clive always manages to riff the best comments. I don't know how he manages to do it. I laugh my head off behind the scenes listening to reading comments in general. So let's think. What else can we talk about? Give me some other ideas. If anyone's interested in watches that they'd like to look at, whether that's modern, vintage, anywhere else, I'll just go back to our Watches of Knightsbridge pieces to drool over because the photography is just so good. Have a look at these guys. Here's a little JLC, another pilot watch. It's too cool. And talking about field watches, what I wanted to kind of pose to all of you guys is, how do you think we could all push for military watches or just field watches in general to be made? I'm just reading the comments, sorry. What do you guys think we could do to push field watches out and make them more popular? Do you think, I mean, if someone like, I remember that Hamilton just released a re-release of their W, is it a G10 or W10? And that got huge press. It would be nice to be able to perpetuate that kind of thing, because there've always been questions posed about, should I get a dress watch? Should I get a dive watch? And I was thinking about it this week while doing this mil-spec write-up. And I thought, well, geez, why not just go for a field watch? Because it has the best of both worlds. It has the dress nature, but then it's understated and can be worn as a great little sports watch. That's too cool. And found at Timorous Capital talking about the bung strap. We're talking about the bunt strap. I don't know, we're gonna have to look at that. The 39 millimeter Glashütte CQ. And if you guys would like me to look at your comments, whether they're suggestions or anything else, I will probably respond to them easier if you tag me at IDGuy. Might be easier. Rolex Oyster Quartz, yes, we can get into that. I'm going to try and lock the comments. So, Glashütte CQ. Let's see what that is. I have no idea what that is. I haven't actually looked at Glashütte original, which is pretty poor of me. Is this a vintage piece? Is this a... Wow, look at that. Geez. Now, these renders, I tell you, when it comes to vector, oh, geez. Let me give you a little lesson in design in general. You can tell that the case was probably real. The strap is real. We jump down to the dial. We see that the numerals are well set. They've got some nice thickness to them, some nice reflective quality. Then we jump to the hands, and you can tell that these hands are actually vectors, as in they aren't based on anything real. They've been made in a program, and you can tell by just the flatness of it. You've got these, that kind of, as a design guy, a pedantic design guy, seeing this, you're like, oh, it kind of ruins the image. Anyway, that's just my terrible design edition telling you guys that. It looks great. I think it looks cool. What I like about Glashütte is how they place their date windows. I think that's so clean. Looks awesome. So I'll leave this up here while reading through the comments. I'm not so much of a fan of these separate numeral baton layouts. That doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't look as clean. But are these re-editions? Are these new? I would imagine these all look pretty new to me. This has got a ceramic bezel. Love the layout on the bezel. I think it looks great. Okay, I'm going to catch up with these. Clive, founder, Timorous Capital. I don't understand why the Boulder Field Watch has such a great appeal in the US. I recently ordered one. That's a good watch to look at, actually. Let me pull it up. Thank you so much for the suggestion on this little Glashütte piece, by the way. It looks great. There's a question about Zenith. Let's see. I wonder where we should carry on from. Didn't Paul Newman wears Daytona on a bunt strap? Yeah. Okay. I'm going to try and keep this up. Boulder watch. I'm going to try and keep with it, but then if I do miss, there's questions about Oyster Quartz, which I'll get back to now. So these are the watches here. Yeah. I don't know. What is irritating about watches when you look at so many of them is that if they don't grab you with something instantly, you know, once you see it and you just bang, you know what watch it is. It kind of leaves you on the fence, leaves you a bit, I mean, like this, for example, this watch is sort of riffing off a Panerai in many ways. I do like the lugs, but in general, it looks very flat. Oh, here we go. I've actually seen reviews of this. This has a meteorite dial, if I'm not mistaken. Any Alonga & Zone field watch? Very good question. And I'll butcher your name if I mention it. So it's Vong Kao. Yes, Alonga & Zone made a very important field watch back in the day. And it was basically just a Flieger watch. Let's see. I don't think they called themselves Alonga & Zone back in the day. But I might be wrong. I'm sure they're going to give me all the ridiculous. Here we go. So Lange pretty much, I think they specialized in the Type B style Flieger, which is basically this layout. And I think these are some of the rarest. Lange has quite an interesting history. And IWC has the best history out of all of them. So answering your question, found at Tinless Capital, I don't see the appeal behind these bolder watches. I mean, the meteorite dial, what I don't get more than anything else, when we're talking about meteorite dials, what we jump to is the Rolex Pepsi with the meteorite dial. And it just, I mean, does it deserve the hype and the demand when you can buy, you know, a $600 watch that also has a meteorite dial? Very difficult. I see a question by Clive saying, I have a friend who has 5 identical. Does he have a problem? You know what? Actually, let's jump to Pateks. I want to do that actually. Since we're just riffing, I'm just going to riff off this stuff. Let's just get to all the different watches that the friend has. I think the 5196 is a gorgeous watch. In yellow gold, really charming. No, it's not G, it's J, right? Gorgeous watch. I mean, you can't go wrong with this. It's too cool for words. Then we have a 5296 in white gold, if I remember right, and that has the date complication. I'm someone who's more of a proponent towards a no date complication. The standard date it's okay, but I think no date is cleaner. And then we have a 5127, if I remember right. I'm just riffing. I don't even know if, yeah, here's another example, 5127. I do dig the crown guards. I think this is better than the 5296. I think this is a better example because the crown guards, that almost deco feel works very well with the watch, I think. And then finally we have the 5110, I think. I hope I'm getting these right. Not the Nokia, come on. Let's see. I'm actually getting these references right. How cool is that? Didn't even make a mistake. I think the world time's cool. Very hard to read and everything else, but I think it's cool. If it was me, I would be keeping the 5196, the world time. Oh, geez, we also have a perpetual calendar. I don't even know what that reference is. I don't know. I would keep 2, get rid of 3, and get a really nice, you know, a 5170 if possible. If it was me wanting a Patek Phillipe as a watch, I think the chronograph for me is something that would work. I'm not someone who enjoys the simple minimalistic watch. I much prefer a watch that has a bit of a complication. And you want just one watch, you know, a really killer looking watch, get a chronograph, simple to clean. Anyway, I've probably missed a lot. 5035, thank you, Rich Buddy. Thank you for joining us. Anyway, let me pull it up. 5212A is amazing. Let's get those watches up. We're on to Patek. We might as well talk about them. I might need some help with the reference. The 5035, I know this watch has sentimental value. And it's a watch that definitely doesn't appeal to me. It looks a bit of a mess. It's all over the show. But at the same time, the fact that this was one of the most important calibers to be released in this watch, it has a lot of history. It's probably going to gain a lot of value over the years. And I don't know, just the clash of the numerals, I think with batons, it would look so much cleaner. And this watch does deserve to have a watchmaker's 4 on the dial. If you don't know what that is, let me pull up something else for you to look at. Maybe they'll be able to give me something here. Watchmaker's 4 has a very important design element to add. Here's an example on clock face. So instead of having the standard 1, 2, 3 and your, what is it, I, and then V, the 4 plays in tandem with the 8 on the other side of the dial. It makes a much better balance between the dials. So if you draw a triangle between the 12, the 4, and the 8, it looks a lot cleaner than instead having the standard 4, which doesn't work anywhere near as well with all the others on the side. It's a little bit of a balancing issue. I don't know. Once again, as a design guy, I pick up all these stupid things. But, you know, it's a cool watch. The caliber's cool. That's the most important thing. That's awesome. Anyway, I'm trying to keep up with the chat. The 5205G. Thank you for the suggestion, Mark. Let's have a look. 52. Don't know how we managed to get onto Patek, but hey, Clive was the man. This is the fancy. I don't know so much about the integration on the dial. It doesn't speak to me as much, you know. And it's cool. I mean, it's crazy complication, stupidly expensive, and it has everything you would ever need when it comes to, is this an annual or is this a perpetual calendar? Moon phase as well. I don't know. I'm not such a fan of the offset windows. I actually much prefer, and for an example, and we're going to pull up the 5212 while we're at it because I really dig this little watch. If anyone has a ton of money to spare at the moment, no, I don't want a GPS. If anyone has a lot of money to spare at the moment, get yourselves one of these because it's made of steel. Once again, we know steel Pateks are huge, and there's something so innate and special about this reference. And I'll also look at this piece just now. There's something so innate about having this kind of hand scroll finishing to the dial. Gives it a lot of character, and it looks too cool. There's so many questions about everything going on here. LLD can't read Roman. I don't know. I'm gonna have to try and keep up with these. The 5056P, Rich Buddy. Let's have a look. 5056. So this is the platinum version with a slate gray dial. I do like the slate gray. I think it's awesome. And I don't know, this is probably the power reserve indicator. That does look quite clean. I think dials also play a big part. Don't know so much about the dial in the light. What's that? Can someone give me the reference for the new Nautilus that's been released with the all the trimmings? 57, what is it? I have no idea. And there's another question about 3940, maybe my holy grail, Rich Buddy. I'm sure that's some insane looking 3940 Patek. Probably a chronograph, I'd imagine. Oh, okay. This is the standard. I do love this. I think this layout is too cool. The size. When it comes to dress watches, I think size is so important as well. And this is a clear example of a brilliantly designed watch. Has everything you would need. So nice and clean. I think it looks gorgeous. 5712, that's it. Thank you, Rich Buddy. I'm just closing all the field watch tabs and we're just jumping into all these ridiculous references. This watch really grabbed me. No, not this one. Not the 12. The latest one that just came out with a full annual calendar integration into it. Let me just type it in. It's the 5. I'm sure it's got a completely different reference number to it now. I don't even know if it is a 57, etc., etc. I'm not a fan of this version. If it was me, I would be going for the standard Nautilus over this. 5726. That could be it. No, not that one. But I do like this. This is, I mean, these watches are just nuts. The white dial, I think, has quite a charm. Very sporty in nature. 5396. Yeah, Cheetown, that is a killer looking watch. Let's pull one of those up. I've got 4 tabs concurrently working at the moment. 5396 in rose gold, for me, would be a winner, I think. It's one of those watches that you can, let's see, where's a good example? Geez. It's another thing I don't understand about these very high-end watches. There we go, the Brigade numerals. I mean, how can you not like that? That is so clean. Down to symmetry again. For a design guy, it's what I look for. I love the Brigade numerals. Adds such a character. 5726, I keep seeing, it's not the 57. What the hell is it called? Is it a 5426? Damn it. I'm just going to do the hard yards and type in Nautilus, and it's a perpetual, or it's an annual. There it is. It's called the 2018, 5740. I knew we wouldn't get it. That is so clean. And when it comes to just the ultimate sports watch, I think it has something to it that makes a difference. And it's symmetry. I love symmetry with watches. Not so much of a fan of the way the numerals are laid out on the subdial here, when you have 1, 3, 5, 7 all spaced out differently, and then just a complete clutter of numerals. But these are stupidly priced. These pieces, I think, are well in the 100,000s, as mentioned by Brandon. Thank you. 5740. Yeah, that was it. Thank you, Rich Buddy. That's one. Cool looking watch. Really dig the symmetry. But again, the Nautilus, it has a charm, but a lot of people don't like it. So it's up to everyone. The 5070G, that's another chronograph, if I'm not mistaken. But I really dig this. This 5396, classic. Love the Brigade numerals. I mean, that is a real F-off watch in the sense. 5070 Patek in platinum. Yeah, why not? Let's just go mad. Do you guys like the 5070 over the 5170? Is the 5070 just a more appealing watch because it's a little bit older? I'm guessing this is an earlier generation. I do like the stepped lugs. That's a nice character. Has a really nice character. Let's see. Everyone's just listening to me. There we go. Rich Buddy, 124,000 MSRP in dollars. And I'm sure it'll be even worse when it comes to gray market. Probably ask double that. Gorgeous looking watch though. I mean, and the movements and everything else that come with it. Question is, would you opt for a Lunga or would you opt for a Patek at the end of the day? That is the question. You know, it's a hard pill to swallow. I really like the 1815 chronograph, but I'd be interested just if someone could reply Patek or Lunga in the comments. I see Max has. So we've got a Lunga and a Patek, easily a Lunga. I'm interested in knowing why you guys prefer the Lunga over the Patek. And I'll just pull up some Lunga pieces while we're at it. They have such a broad array of pieces. Some are just so overly complicated. The Lunga one, you see, it's not a watch that appeals to me. I know I did a big write-up on it a while ago, but the watch just doesn't have that pull to me. Even though it's offset and asymmetrical, it looks cool, but for me, I'd much prefer something with a bit of symmetry. I think the 1815 is one of those watches that is awesome. But again, we all have different tastes, you know. Some people preferred just a standard dress watch. Jessica Lang, thank you, Clive. Clive always has the best. The Zeitwerk minute repeater, good God. Talking the money that goes into these pieces. I mean, I didn't even know they had a minute repeater Zeitwerk. These are crazy looking things, right? They have such a strange look. I don't know if it appeals to me. I think what bugs me about it is I love the layout. I love the analog digital layout, but then having the subdial kind of is a bit of a clash. This watch is very much like a clash, a juxtaposition in every way. You've got the modern, and then you've got the vintage blend. Lunga seems to do a good job. Love the integrated hammers on the dial. I think that looks so clean. And watching them work when the minute repeater goes off, it's too cool. And the black dial, I mean, these watches are just nuts. We're very far away from field watches and military watches, but hey, what can I say? Tom Austin prefers tool watches. I'm the same. I'm much more of a tool watch guy. I prefer watches that I can actually wear and beat about instead of dress watches. But I mean, geez, look at the movements on these things. It is unreal how much work goes into these watches. Let's see, is that a better one? The finishing, the hand engraving, it's just above and beyond. And you can basically attribute price to the amount of time that goes into making a watch. I'm pretty sure that's how it works. Rolex made military watches, Clive. As far as I know, they made trench watches, but I don't know about the Second World War pieces. I'd actually like to have a look just now. If you like any more questions, Zenith Double-Matic World Time Chronograph under 10K. Let's pull that up. Zenith Double-Matic chrono. We have gone an hour. I want to show you a little preview of what's coming out next week. I have an image that I'm going to share with all of you guys. That is gorgeous. Really cool. Kind of reminds me of the Master Compressor JLC chronograph. Offset date is interesting. And this has a world time in it as well. I mean, geez, complications in these pieces are just insane. Breitling A4 Navitime and Premiere, no date. I'll have a look at that now. Thank you, Sleep Factory. This is a cool looking watch. Love the highlights. Love the red and black combination. Very nice and clean. I mean, looking up the Breitling, let's see, the A40035. Let's see. Wow, that's very cool. I think there's just something about Brigade numerals that just pulls anyone in, right? Very charming looking watch. And is this a recent watch that they've just brought out, or was this quite old? Is this an in-house movement, or is this a Valjoux, or what does this watch have? Interesting if you could mention that in the comments. But it really has a character to it. Breitling's doing well with their new stuff. Looks awesome. You're not late, Maradon. We're an hour into this, basically. And hope to share you 2 more hours. We'll see how it goes, Clive. If you guys are enjoying this, then by all means, we can keep it going. But, you know, depends how I feel in the end as well. Zenith Tourbillon. Tourbillons are bizarre watches. It's just the most peculiar complication. I love the history and the story behind them and what tourbillons, how they establish themselves. Which did you mention? Zenith tourbillon. There's so many of them, but I mean, let me just pull up one. You know, it's all down to placement. I mean, they have Defy tourbillons, and it's just nuts pieces they have. Anyway, I want to pause for a second and show you what's coming up next week. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it on for 5 seconds. Okay, so keep your eyes focused on the screen. I'm going to minimize this. This is the watch I'm wearing right now. Smith's Everest on a G10 strap. Okay, so keep your eyes on the screen. I'm going to be pulling up this image. This is what's happening next week. You can make assumptions about what's coming out, but this is it. I'm doing a little bit of a design exercise in next week's video. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so I hope you've taken that in. I'll zoom in a little bit more for you guys to see. And that's what's coming out next week. Should be a lot of fun. I had a thought of addressing a big debate that goes on all the time with a design solution. And I'm sure if you guys can read what it says on the dial, you can pretty much make out what it's about. Anyway, simple Rolex OP36 white dial is a great everyday. Cheetown, I agree completely. Let's have a look. 36 Oyster Perpetual. Be interested in thinking or seeing what you guys thought that image was that I just showed you. Let's see. Just a standard. I mean, there's some really cool references. I do like the double batons. I think the 369 layout is a little bit cleaner with the coronet at the top. Great everyday wearing watch. So, Rolex Amiga. Brandon, you're getting close. So, Mill Sub with their Seamaster Professional bracelet. Yeah, you're getting there. You're getting close. So it's going to be a very cool discussion. I look forward to sharing it. The video is all prepared and everything. So I'm now doing a write-up on the loved Reverso. And it's an amazing little history behind these pieces. Can't wait to share that. And I mean, these watches could have very well been used in wartime, if you think about it. 36 OP Blue Explorer dial. That's also a cool piece, Clive. Let's see, blue. But if it was me, if I was given the option to choose a Rolex in its current state right now, I mean, the blue is nice. It's really a charming color. It's not something that appeals to me. I would prefer to have a black dial with this. I do love the layout. I think with the coronet at the top, it's so classy. It has such a nice, callback to vintage pieces. Turkey Vulture, welcome, greetings. Brigade Type 20. Yes, it was at a 20, 22. I'll have a look at that. 12. No, what? No name. Thank you for that. You've just confused me with Roman numerals. I am the worst with Roman numerals. If it was me and I was offered a Rolex to choose right now, and I'm sure this will raise a lot of eyebrows, but it's the 34 mil in olive with the orange indices. I think that is so cool. Again, it goes down to to wearing. I think that the color just works so well with any kind of outfit on a daily basis. I think the olive drab finish is so cool. If I had some pocket money, I would, as a first Rolex, I would love to grab one of these. I don't know. I might be one of a very few amount of people, but you don't have to be on a waiting list for this watch. Again, 34 millimeters is quite small. Here's a comparison between a 36 and a 34. Geez, of course, the pixelation is appalling. Here's some examples. Jeez, I love the low res. Gorgeous looking watch though. I love the olive finish. If they brought these out in different sizes, I think that is such a killer watch. For one Rolex, I think this would be really cool. Seeing what else is going on in the comments. 41 Jubilee with Romans. And I must admit, Jubilee bracelets on these watches, nothing comes close to Jubilees. There's just something about the... I've actually mentioned this before. I'll pull up two vintage pieces and show you what I mean. I'll pull up the 1016 and I'll pull up the 1665. Come on. Not this, no man, the 55. Excuse me. Getting a bit slow. I need to refill my coffee. So what's important when it comes to pairing a simple watch with a bracelet? This little Explorer with an Oyster bracelet looks kind of plain. And I would imagine this little Explorer has a great field watch aesthetic. I think this watch sort of fills so many categories when we think about what it's done over the years, where it's been James Bond's watch in many ways. When it comes to wearing this watch, I think pairing it with a Jubilee is superb because you're blending the simple face with a complicated Jubilee bracelet. But with a watch like a 1655, with a complicated dial and bezel, you want a simple bracelet. I think these two watches just riff off each other so well. You have a simple with a complex dial and then a simple dial with a complex bracelet. We're always going to resort back to the 1016. I mean, geez, if I had a choice of two vintage Rolexes, I'd probably get both Explorers because they're just such a charming pair. And I mean, this looks like a military spec watch, wouldn't you say? I think it looks awesome. 1655 has such a charm. It's always going to be in the back of my mind. Such a character. And the original, the generic looking Explorer with that layout, just the numerals, the layout on the piece, the styling, such a character. It's too cool. Anyway, if you'd like some more questions, let's see what this watch looks like on a bunt strap. Might be interesting to see. Do they have any examples? They do. And that's very cool. It's what I love doing sometimes is just Googling Vietnam era Rolex. And then there's all kinds of ridiculous pieces like GMTs. And there was a Vietnam Explorer. Geez, I mean, there's such... What about the Commando? What do you guys think of the... Is it even called the 1016 Commando? And the Space Walker, the Space Dweller, all these crazy names. This is an old piece. What do you guys think of the date-just styled hands? I'm interested in knowing. Brigade. Okay, let's pull it up. No name. Thank you for the suggestion. Let's have a look quick. Another watch that I really haven't focused on is Brigade in the past. This looks nicely spec'd. So is this, I'm so confused with all of these references, the Type 20, 21, 22. I think the Type 20 is quite the character. One thing I mentioned in the last stream about Brigade. Let's see, get a nice picture up. What I love about Brigade is that they're able to take a lot of what their original pieces were about when it comes to the case styling. All the Brigade pieces adopt this characteristic coin edging around the cases, really nice and clean. They invented the hairspring, the oval coil, sorry, so many little bits and pieces. Love the indices. It's a cracking looking watch. I think it looks superb. That's a Type 20. I can't get is it the Type 22 that you're asking about? Let's see. Or is it the Type 12? I just don't know. This is a 21. God, there's so many numbers. This looks very much like has that kind of Zen format of a pilot watch. Looks awesome. I'm just catching up with the comments. Let's see. Talking about bunt strap. Yeah, I'm gonna have to try and keep this conversation in one direction. I don't know. This is cool. Check the split time. 42 mil. Yeah, I'm struggling with the Type 22. I'm guessing it's this. flyback chronograph, 10 hertz. Good Lord. It's nuts. Brigade has some amazing watches out there, really killer looking watches. And what I like is that, again, they keep that classic styling. They keep that classic styling to the way they arrange their pieces, but this is also very modern. What I do dig, look at how they've done the printing on the dial. This is a very typical graphic design where they've tried to push it so that there's almost a 3D character behind it, just by adding a highlight as the red. That's really cool. I like that detail. Very nice detail. Gives it a 3D nature, even though it's two-dimensional. Very retro-like. You know, it has that appeal. Fascinating watches. Brigade could be a whole subject in itself. Let's see, Type 21, 20s. Let's just have a look at the 1016 Commando again. Awesome story. Imagine finding one of these pieces in a pawn shop somewhere. I don't even know how many references of these they made, but hell of a character. I saw a question by Rich Buddy about the 1675 Brando. What about the GMT Marlon Brando you reviewed? That was very strange character study that I did. And it was all about how the bezel, the bezel being taken off. There's all kind of, like a hidden meaning behind the watch being used. I think the 1675 it's one of those real charming pieces of the time period. Definitely captures the period. If I wanted a Pepsi Rolexes are probably the one version that I really don't like, but this version, when Pepsi watches were just released around this time, I think this one's great. The modern Pepsi doesn't do it for me in the slightest. Vintage Tudor Ranger, I'll have a look at those now. Get to the chopper. Thanks, Clive. If it was me wanting a GMT right now, it'll be a Batman. And that's simply because, again, pedantic design person, and I would be getting it on the Jubilee if it was me, just because GMTs being a more dressier watch, I think they deserve Jubilees. But the black and blue bezel has a more realistic purpose, since from 6 in the evening till 6 in the morning, you have a black sky. From 6 in the morning till 6 in the evening, it's a blue sky. And for a GMT complication, it resembles day and night so well. It's so simple. That's what I love so much. Sometimes Rolex really hits it out the park, and I think this watch really nailed it with the color choices. Understated. I've recommended this watch to a few people. I've had some email requests about, should I go for the Pepsi Jubilee or should I go for the Batman? And I've always said Batman Jubilee is the one I would go for, just because it's so much more toned down and great. Okay. Picked up the Hamilton W10 reissue today. Stunner. Well done. Durbar Marg. Apologies for that name mispronounced. Let's see. Curtis, if you like the Rolex 1655, Steinhardt Ocean Vintage GMT, it's the case on that watch doesn't do it for me. One of those things where the 42 mil case with the lugs and everything else really doesn't pull me in. I'll pull it up a bit later. You can have a look at it. Let's see. The Sky Dweller. Do you like the Sky Dweller in white? I've said this a few times that I'm not much of a fan of oversized Rolex pieces above 40 mils. I think Rolex has really hit a sweet spot with their 40 mil pieces. But on a different wrist, this watch could be great. I think if it was me and I was given the brief to create this watch, I would tone down the bezel. I think the bezel is a bit too hard on these watches. What I loved so much about the vintage pieces, like the vintage Datejust, was that the bezels were like half the size. It really brings, it's subtle, but it's also there when you see it. But this is just so flashy and in your face. If you look at some of these pictures, it's just a bit too much for me personally. But the size and scale is pretty correct for this watch, since it needs to be seen. I mean, it's difficult to read it as it is. Come on, give me a good picture, please. Google's the best, simply the best. Yeah, I think it's a charming watch. I like the blue dial. I don't know so much about the white dial. I think the white's a bit plain. Blue looks nice and clean. And I've said this a few times, just talking about GMTs. If we had to go back 50 years to where GMTs were introduced, this watch would be the perfect example. Of course, they didn't have this technology back in the day, But I believe that they would have introduced this watch as the GMT watch because flying was supposed to be very classy. It was supposed to be like this new era. Why they gave people on planes, practically sports watches. I don't know, the GMT, if we just jump to the GMT in general, I can't remember the GMT reference off the top of my head. 16750, I'm going to say, and that's probably the older version. 116570. I am absolutely useless with references as well. Can be good sometimes, but other times. So this is what bugs me. There's something that bugs me about GMTs in general. I've seen some more questions. Only got 1.5 hours to go now. You can do it. Thanks, Clive. Truth feels guilty. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining. JLC Navy SEALs, I'll have a look at that. I'm scrolling up in these comments. I'm really botching it. Sorry, guys. I'd just like to highlight this about GMT since we're talking about it. So if you remember that the GMT was introduced in tandem with the Submariner, it blows me away that even now the GMT has that Submariner case, the Submariner styling, when it was supposed to be a watch built for the skies. It was supposed to be elegant and, very clean, not a sports watch. It kind of goes against the whole idea, where I think the Sky Dweller hits it on the head as being a watch that pretty much blends the idea of a dress watch into a more sports watch aesthetic. Has everything that you need. It has your annual calendar. I think this is a brilliant, that's another thing. Rolex, just sometimes they just hit the mark with ideas. This idea of just having a simple little red highlight, knowing that you're in the 9th month of the year. I mean, that's genius, right? It's a genius idea. So simple, doesn't get in the way, not obstructive. It's not another stupid sub-dial that's put on the other side or whatever. It's integrated into the dial. Sometimes, and why Rolex works so well is because it very much is so plain and basic with the way they present their products. Just in general, they're easy to recognize, easy to understand. They're not exactly graceful. They have kind of like a hard aesthetic to them, but just like Apple, that's a cheetah on it. It has that Apple feel to them. Absolutely. The way they package their watches, such a simple format that anyone can understand. That's what wins at the end of the day. They're not exactly adventurous like brands like Amiga, for example. At the same time, when it comes to hitting points like nailing just a simple idea of having a complication hidden inside the dial, it's just killer. It's so clever. But then they do botch it up at times. Like when looking at this watch, I think the bezel is too thick. They could just scale down the bezel a little bit more, make a completely different watch. Anyway, let's see. I missed a couple more comments. How about the Rolex Sky beggar? Track multiple times. Oh, Clive, you always just hit it. Hey? I just don't know how you do it. You're just on the ball all the time. I have an original 6750 bought in the 80s. I'm now a professional airline pilot and have a Sky Dweller or a perfect. Yeah, I really think when it comes to just being a watch built for the skies, I think the Sky Dweller has it. The GMT, I don't know, it's a strange beast. So it's all down to personal preference. Of course, this watch has been around for well over 50 years, so it's very hard to suddenly say, no, this watch is wrong, because I mean, it is the original GMT watch of the time. So that's cool. Has anyone had hands-on time with these Pepsis? Geez, that bezel really bugged me when I saw it. It really is. Good morning from Latham St. Anne's. Paul O'Shea, thank you so much for joining. And you guys are all joining me from different sides of the world. It's too cool. Could you do an episode on the GS SBGN 003? What is that? Is that the GMT, I'm guessing? Getting back out of Patek. Let's see. Grand Seiko. All these reference numbers. Geez, why can't they make it easy here? SBGN 003. Is this the quartz? I think I did mention this watch in a video. It kind of riffs off the Explorer in a few ways in Explorer 2. But as a quartz watch, I think it's cool. Very functional, easy to use. I do like the highlights. I like the yellow, olive. Seiko does some interesting stuff. But if it was me and I wanted a Grand Seiko, I'd be getting the Peacock. I know it's very difficult to find. They are very in demand. But as a GMT watch, I think this thing is just gorgeous. You want one Grand Seiko, get one of these. Love the dial. It's just so, it has, that's one thing the Grand Seiko does, is that they have some of the most charismatic dials on any watch. I mean, agree or disagree with me. Nikhil, thank you for joining. 5 a.m. A lot of you guys are joining in the early hours of the morning, and it must be a Sunday morning. You guys are absolute legends. That's all I can say. Let's see. The thigh dweller. The thigh dweller. You know, the James Cameron, talking about thigh dwellers. This is the one watch that just doesn't do it for me in the slightest. I think it's just so much. Does this, I mean, there's kill and then there's overkill. And I think this watch really has gone a bit far. Just the thickness and the size, it's like wearing a brick. I mean, you can break down a door with this thing, which is pretty cool. I mean, it's very useful. No one will want to mug you in the street because you could just turn this thing into a knuckle duster and completely end the person. Anyway, let's see. Case in the GS is pretty good. Yeah, I agree. I really agree. The finishing, I just think the character, you can't find a dial that has this kind of flair. Maybe the Z Blue Milgauss has a similar pull, but I think this almost teal green color, it's gorgeous. I think it's awesome. 12:30 p.m. Matthew, thank you for joining us. Really, it's so cool. 12:30 p.m., meaning it's just crossed the afternoon for you guys there. Am I right? Too awesome. Anyway, any more suggestions? And if you can tag IDGuy in the chat, I'll probably be able to see it a bit easier if you'd like to see another watch. Yeah, James Cameron Rolex doesn't do it for me. The 43mm Sea Dweller also. What I do appreciate, I mean, the earlier versions, there was actually a manufacturing fault with these earlier James Cameron pieces. Let's see if I can find it. The way the end links had been integrated into the watches. Where is a good picture? Is this Mark Goldberg? Yes, it is. Mark Goldberg has one with the early end link. The way the end link sticks out, I think that could actually really increase the watch's value one day, if you think about it. Just that kind of defect, that kind of flaw could maybe be quite a charming thing for someone one day. And then we look at the 43mm Sea Dweller. What I do appreciate with this watch is the fact that they've managed to tone the indices and everything together. So the actual integration of everything, the balance is there. But 43mm, I think, is ridiculous. Okay, now I've got 100 IDGuy. Thanks, guys. This is going to be a bit harder. How much super chat for you to get tatted up like Paul Thorpe? I'm not into tattoos at all, Clive. Sorry to say. It just doesn't appeal to me. I think long term. I think in 30 years' time, will I still like the idea of having tattoos on me? And I just can't picture it at all. It's BGE215, Rolex Oyster Quartz. Geez, we got JLC's navies. Okay, let's pull up the JLC navy. This has been asked a few times by, oh geez, this is just going mad, Andreas. I think JLC, that their compressor, if I'm wrong, it's a compressor watch that they used back then. Yeah, I think it's really sick. I mean, it just hits the name Navy out of the park. Oh, come on, give me a high res image, please. Anything. Come on, there we go. It just hits the name Navy out of the park. Has that charm. Those indices. It is very vintage inspired in a way. It has that sort of Panerai feel to it, you know. Just keeping up with the comments. This is so cool. IWC Mojave Desert. Jeez. Rolex Red Sea Dweller. I won't. Clive, that is disgusting. I just picked up that one. Okay. So the crown, I think the compressor, I've said this a few times, I think the compressor style JLC needs to return. One of the watches I really like is the Memovox with the compressor crowns. It's such a heavy build. You just know that this watch could probably go through a war zone. I said I would get some ink when I had my 40th birthday, and Clive Watcheranga, that was 6 years ago, still no ink. Yeah, I feel the same way about it. You know, I might, you know, as a push, I might do it to commemorate a family member, but other than that, it'll be a tiny little scroll, if anything. But no, I'm not exactly. I heard it interesting. If anyone's watched Coach Red Pill before, he discusses tattoos, and it's very interesting. I jumped onto one of his episodes a while ago, and it was fascinating. Jean-Claude Beaver, good to have you here, sir. Love what you've been doing to the brands, as I've said a few times before. Too cool. And I know it's beaver, as in beaver, the animal. JLC compressor, yeah, getting back to that. Anyway, there's been a few more questions about the SBGA W213 NY Punter. Good to have you here, sir. Let's see, GS. These references, SBGA W23. I mean, can they make it any more complicated? Yeah, this is a charming little piece. Grand Seiko does make great looking dress watches. Love, and I think what pulls me to it is the cream dial. I think the cream dial makes a big difference as a dress watch. Get chuffed to bits and tattered. I'd get it for $500. Jeez. Yeah, I love my favorite scene in, I can't remember what the film was called, but the guy who had the tattoo, no regrets, on his forehead. That has got to be one of the funniest scenes I've ever seen in a film. What was the film called? This watch is also just such an underrated piece. Gorgeous, gorgeous looking Oyster Perpetual. What was that film where the boyfriend comes in and he's got no regrets tattooed onto his head? And he's like, really? You have no regrets? No, man. Do you like Hublots, Brandon Marks? Hublots. Hublot watches, no. Can't say it. Vintage Hublots had quite a pull to them, but these modern pieces, you know, as it's been said many times, that it's just riffing off the Royal Oak aesthetic. Everyone knows. I mean, Jean-Claude Biver even says it's the Royal Oak aesthetic that they wanted to. Hublot means porthole, so in that way, it's cool. But no, the designs of the watches, the prices they command, it just I don't know, it's just too much. Parmigiani, geez, be jumping all over the place, guys. At least a 700 tattoo. Exactly, Clive. I mean, geez, give me a break, man. Yeah, Hublot, I mean, geez, would anyone go for one of these, really? Hublot Big Bang, skeleton, Arabic numerals, diamond. Doesn't do it for me in the slightest. I do kind of like these Ferrari-inspired. This was for McLaren, I'm guessing. No, it says MP. Anyway, it's weird. These Ferrari-inspired pieces are quite cool. But again, it's just, they like Ur work, but not as good. Ur work is silent H. Hublot, excuse me. Sorry, Hans. Do I like the Milgauss? No name. Good question. I really do. I did a video about it. I think I called it, actually, the one Milgauss that I really dig. Not that one. Here we go. This is such a sleeper. This is one Milgauss that everyone should get into. 1019. I did a video about it. What did I call it? Why is the Milgauss so polarizing? Has to be one of the best like catch lines, all to do with magnetism and stuff. I think they are really cool watches. These vintage ones. I mean, this was basically built right off the 1016 case. Very rare, especially the black dial. I think the black dial is the most rare out of all of them. And the modern Milgauss, what I like, what's that reference? I just 6541. Yeah, that's the pre. That's also, that watch was a crazy looking thing. Very strange. And I made another, what was the video? I think it was in that video. No, if you're on my channel, open up a new tab and look up the Einstein Rolex. I called this watch. I called it the Einstein because it has that bizarre like character. You know, the characteristic photo of Einstein with his tongue sticking out. I think this Milgauss pretty much resembles him, going into science and all of that stuff. So I called it the Einstein Milgauss. This thing was bizarre. Just as the Chronograph was brought in, they decided to put it into a Milgauss style case. I mean, it's very much just a Submariner, but just strange, really quirky. It's almost like if you gave this watch to Tudor, this is what they would do, right? Some had smooth bezels. But what happened straight after that, this watch lasted for a short time until it was removed. I mean, this is just the most bizarre Rolex out there, right? Really cool. But then we jumped to the 1019 and they just cleaned up their act perfectly. And now going to the modern pieces, talking about the Z Blue. Let's just open up the tab here. The Z Blue Milgauss, and the reason why I mentioned the 6541 is because what's fascinating, in the video, I basically address it this way. I say, this being the first watch, quirky, strange. This being introduced, very sleek, very understated. And what they've done with the modern piece is they basically combined both aspects. They've made it quirky, but at the same time, they've also made it very understated. Love the blue. I mean, it's one of the most beautiful dials that Rolex makes. Adding that little arrow hand, so charming. And the orange and everything, it's great. The arrow hand is basically a callback to the 6541. And then the simple nature is a callback to the 1019. That's too cool. Really dig it. Of all the Milgauss pieces, I would probably go for this one. I'm not so much of a fan of the green and the black and this faux patina look. I don't know, doesn't speak. Again, with the Milgauss, the whole idea with the color scheme and the layout, talking about magnetism and electrifying and everything, I think the blue has that, what would they call it? What is the zirconium blue finish with the green and the green, it's just so unique. I think these are going to be once Rolex stops making these are going to be very collectible one day. I think they're gorgeous. Globemaster anti-magnetic is greater than the Milgauss. Yeah, you're right, Crappy. I'll open up Omegas just now. It is too thick, and that's down to the cage that they put around the movements. You have to ask yourself, with all the silicone hairsprings they use, why would they need to put a cage around it as well if the watch is so anti-magnetic as it is? Proots, IDGuy, look at the Railmaster. Let's hear your thoughts. Dig it. Railmaster is awesome, and we might as well, since we're talking about Explorers and everything else. I prefer, if it was me, I'd be going for the 57 reissue. I love these reissue pieces. I'm probably one of the very few people who do like them. The modern Railmaster, I don't know so much. Strange. I mean, it has the modern Aquaterra case, like down to a T. I mean, this dial, for example, it just doesn't speak to me as much as, the more vintage watch on the left-hand side here. But I do love the indices. I love the constellation style cross that they put through the middle. It's a nice character trait of vintage Omega pieces. I think it looks cool. What I do like is the 12, 3, 6, and 9 coupled with the awesome layout. I think it's awesome. Thomas Burnett, I haven't seen you in the chat much. Thanks so much for the super chat, brother. You are such a gent. It's just too cool. Sorry, I'm missing all these other comments. Let's see, Omega Dynamic Chrono. I'm going to look at that. Thank you, Hortology. Vietnamese noodle soup. I don't know what Clive is chatting about, but that's Clive. Let's see. Taffy pulling. Love it, you guys. So the Railmaster is cool. Has a nice character, but I think what doesn't appeal to me about this watch is that they've tried to blend modern and vintage too literally in a way. You've got the modern case, and then you have this bizarre looking, I mean, just the numerals on the dial. It looks very, very vintage in its aesthetic. It's kind of a clash where I think that the reissue just has, it hits all the marks because it is, I mean, the layout, the numerals, the big broad arrow hand. Amiga is so underrated. And I was seriously considering getting the new James Bond Seamaster Professional as my first luxury watch. But of course, life gets in the way life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. So yeah, more comments. Let's see. Speedy 57. The Speedmaster 57 is, I don't know, I have mixed feelings about it. I think they were a little bit all over the shop when they introduced this watch. I mean, this was one of the first issues they brought out. Nice and clean. It has a very dress aesthetic to it. I like the plain bezel, simple bezel. Very nice. Love the broad arrow hand, but I don't know. It's a bit of a mixed bag. It doesn't appeal to me anywhere near as much as the Railmaster or the Seamaster of the time. So let's see. It's a question. What is my full-time job? No name. I like to call myself a consulting industrial designer. So I have a few people that I'm in contact with to give me jobs with regards to whether it's helping branding companies. I've done all sorts of things, logistics, designed all sorts of ridiculous things in my life. So it's cool. In my short career, I've only been a qualified industrial designer for about 5 years. No, not even 3 years or so. I basically paid through my schooling thanks to consulting. It was a dream. I was very lucky. Just goes to show that when you put yourself out there in the world, someone will find you. I had some very interesting contracts pulled up helped design things that went into space. I'll go so far to say that. And that was an amazing learning experience. These oyster quartzes, oyster quartz date just. This is not a rare bird, Clive. You must confirm that for me, please, sir. I think date just with the Roman numerals are really charming. I think they look great, really nice and clean. I'm not so much of a fan of these. I think personally, when we talk about just the time period, the 70s, let's get one with the Romans up again. Jeez, these are very rare, of course, very sought after. I think what's so interesting about this is that you have the 70s aesthetic, okay? And it was a time of like crazy experimentation. Of course, everyone was gentrifying or nautalizing or whatever they were doing to these watch cases. But then incorporating Roman numerals, again, it ties back to the references where you almost have this, you're kind of questioning whether it's a sports watch or a dress watch with this in between. And it's cool. Oyster quartz is cool. I'd be interested in knowing what it's like with the maintenance of these pieces. What happens to the circuit boards and everything else? Here's a comparison between it and a chronograph, AP. I think it's very unique. These watches are going to definitely go up in value, and they're great talking points. I mean, who wears watches like these nowadays? It's very cool. Rolex, yeah, the Romans are hitting this. Thank you, Proots. I love you too. Rube Goldberg does clean design. GS Quartz, no quartz for me. I can't place the accent. No name. It's a mix of English and South African. I am officially South African from Cape Town, if anyone would like to know. So the very southern tip of Africa. It's basically on the other side of the world before I arrived in the UK. So let's, what else were we talking about? I'm just jumping back to the comments. Gentified watches, yeah. Oh, geez, let me try and pull up something for you guys to look at while I'm doing this. Okay, what else? Any more suggestions on pieces to look at? Citizen NY004, Chopard. Oh my gosh, crappy luxury. There's so many questions. Okay, let's jump to Citizen. Haven't looked at Citizen a lot. It's another brand that needs a lot of attention in the future, which I plan on looking at. NY0040. Mr. Marcus, thank you for the suggestion. Hell, that's cool. That's very cool. Very, has a Seiko-ish feel. These bezels are quite charming. They have a interesting pull. At the one side, you've got this tailored down looking dress appeal, but then you have these easy to grab knurlings. More watches need these knurlings on the bezels. Some watches really struggle with that when it comes to dive watches. Nice little character though. Looks cool. Burned with fire. Parmigiani Tonda. Okay, let's look up some Parmigiani. Jacques Dro. Oh, geez. We're going nuts here. Amiga Dynamic Chrono. Horology has been mentioning it a lot. Sorry, let me get to it now. Amiga Dynamic Chronograph. Let's see if I've seen this before. Yes, I have seen this before. Really interesting piece. This is Theo and Harris's listing. Nice photo. So this is all faux patina, I'm guessing, giving it that character. I think it's cool. It's got a nice blend of modern and vintage to it. You know, has that the script, the so-called Brigade script, we could call it, has some kind of appeal. The faux patina is quite nice, and then it has the yellow spot colors, which kind of gives it that more modern touch. Let's see. Curtis, I became a qualified industrial designer in '78. I've worked as a professional pilot since. Wow, that's awesome. That's really cool. Now, I'd like to diversify. This is why I love this page so much. I don't know, I've found such a draw to watches because when we talk about design and obsolescence and everything else, watches are the furthest from it. You know, these things are made to last forever with no reference to obsolescence at all. And I think that's what's really turned me on to watches, and I enjoy it. Also found a real passion in writing, just writing about watch design, which is something that no one does. And charm. So let's see, Jacques Dro, Grant, second email. Oh, geez, let's have a look at that. Jacques Dro, how would you pronounce that? Again, I'm also useless with my pronunciation of things. Grand, second. Why in the hell did they call it email? I have to ask. Hell, these are gorgeous. Again, we're jumping to horology now, but that is stunning. I love the balance. There's something about watches. Do we prefer the offset or do we prefer the center? I think the center set is more interesting. Let's find a nice big picture. Are there any big pictures? Meteorite dial. Moon, they call this one. Fascinating looking piece. But again, what bugs me about these watches is the what is taking the precedence here. You see how tiny the actual the actual dial is to read from. I don't know, it's a nice aesthetic, very nice and clean. I love the balance between the parts. More watches need that. But when it comes to reading the time, you're paying all this money for a time teller, and then you end up with a tiny little clock in the corner. I don't know. Definitely has appeal to a certain person. But let's get back to the movement. If I can pull it up again. Love it. I just love it. I love the detail that goes into these. And another thing brands need to emphasize is the counterbalance, the actual automatic rotor at the back. I think is so important. If you can nail that, like what Brigade does with their balances at the back. What am I saying balance for? Come on, dude. Brigade rotor. I think Brigade does such a good job with the guilloche, and look at that. The texture is amazing. They do all kinds of strange stuff. Brigade is just one of those brands, you know. Offset. I mean, look at that. You very seldom see that layout where you have a miniaturized movement with a smaller rotor. It's too cool. Let's see. Comments. Getting back to these guys. Amiga Dynamic was continued in the 90s. Those watches are just old. Thank you, Iwc. Tree Dillinger looks weird on the wrist. Yeah, I must admit that this little Jacques Dro does look strange. Stream every weekend. So I'm awesome. That I really appreciate, man. Thank you. You know, it all depends. It depends on my mood and how I feel and everything else. That also plays a part. There was a question last week about the Brigade Marine. We're very conflicted about this watch because of the Luminova and everything else. What I like, again, is that vintage draw that it has, but I think Brigade should stick to... This watch would look fantastic with just standard numerals. No Luminova inside them. There's a nice classique tourbillon to pull up. Check the quality of that image. Let's see what else is going on in the questions. Vacheron Constantine, overseas. No name, thank you. No name, you're very cool. Good questions. Thank you for asking. VC overseas, we know what's going to happen to this watch very soon. I have a very strong feeling. This is not insider information, but I have a very strong feeling that these watches are going to be in high demand. How can you not like that piece? You really cannot look past these watches. There's Vaughan Atkinson. He follows the page, and one of his favorite, you know, the main horology watch he has in his collection. He only has a few, and he has a blue dial chronograph, and he just adores it. He wears it practically every day, and because it comes with straps, because it comes with everything you'd need. I mean, here's a good example. It's a superb watch. I love the integration of the straps and how they've thought about just blending the Vacheron logo and everything in between, the Maltese cross, excuse me. How they've blended all that together, I think just makes such an interesting watch. And I spoke about this on the last stream, talking about, you know, comparing it to Patek and AP, the Royal Oak. The fact that they can introduce a modern watch like this, but now be compared against now they're being compared against these high horology brands is something. I mean, look at that. So clean, so simple. Love the way they've set the tracks inside. Very nice and clean. Gorgeous. I don't know. I'd be torn between a blue dial and a black dial. I think blue dial because it just, you know, it has that extra punch. But the one watch that pulls me even more is the Overseas GMT. I said this in the last episode as well. Overseas GMT has that, you know, Explorer style, that 1655 kind of styling to it. And it's just gorgeous. They're really stunning looking watches, really nice characters. I really dig having a crown set at the bottom of the case. Looks awesome. Only one more hour now. You can do it. Thank you, Clive. Oh, geez, we're already hitting 1 o'clock. Guys, this is insane. This stream has gone... I just took a sip of coffee. The stream has gone by so fast. My voice is gone as well, but I mean, I've learned to talk over it. Okay, we'll see how it goes. I mean, give me a few more watches to look at. Something interesting for everyone to have a look at. Whether it's Tudors, whether it's, you know, anything else. Thank you for the suggestion, No Name. This watch just does it for me. And if you know Corey Richards, who is a photographer for National Geographic, he was given a 1-of-1 watch to take up Everest. And he wore the hell out of the thing. It's all scratched up and everything. Look at that. Too cool. Very, and then the engraving at the back. Check the case back. Got Everest engraved. Imagine having a 1-of-1 made of titanium. Oh, lucky guy. That's all I can say. Imagine representing a brand with a one only watch. You wear this for the rest of your life. You know how expensive and valuable it's going to be. Longer 1815 up down. Okay, I'm going to look at that, Clive. The Weiler diver. What the hell is that? That sounds like you're pranking me, but let's have a look. Oh, geez. How many references do we look here? That's cool. Very cool. So that's 60s, I'm guessing, 1960s. Love that layout. Nice and roulette finish. I think the red and black speak so well together. Dan Radke, thank you so much for the super chat. Thoughts on the Blancpain Aqualung Grand Date? And I'm guessing that is basically, it's 50 fathoms. Let's see. And it has a large date at the top of the dial, if I remember. No, at the bottom. Okay. What is this size? 40 millimeters. You know what? I've seen this watch a couple of times, and I think it's so clean. And this is what Putin wears, of course. Putin has one of these. I think it's a stunning looking watch. It's so understated, right? It's got a deploying clasp. It's probably got a sailcloth or a rubber strap. This is basically the rich person's Explorer in many ways. And the date integration, you don't see these kinds of date integrations. Having it at the bottom at the 6 o'clock, it looks stunning. Really clean, really simple, easy to wear. Love it. I mean, simple watches you just can't go wrong with. This would look good with anything, with any kind of strap, any kind of layout. Absolutely adore it, Dan. I actually like to do a video about this. It's very difficult to like factor in what video to do next, whether it's on, I definitely want to do more about the 50 fathoms and the Barthelscaf and all of that. A question about Marathon, Parmigiani Bugatti. Might as well pull that up. There's probably going to be some extremely ridiculous watch. Parmigiani Bugatti. Geez, I really buggered that one up. Oh my soul. Bugatti Super, is this like a super yacht or something? I mean, Parmigiani, they make some cool stuff. I love the cases and the way they've designed them. I know a fellow Wrangler on the page has one. But this arrangement, you know, having the movement the way it is, very bizarre, very strange. I mean, there it is on the wrist. Nice photography, great blurred photos. I do love what they've done here is they've basically taken the aesthetic of that Corne de Vache style lug that they incorporate with lots of, I mean, you know, the Vacheron is very popular with that lug styling. And it's pretty much a calling card for Parmigiani. Interesting, like the layout. It looks very industrial design. A little bit strange though, must say. The Marathon GSAR. What 70s inspired watches do I like, Clive? I'll have a pull up of that now. Let's see, Marathon GS. Geez. What I love about this, the whole interaction, is that we all get to look at these pieces and have a thought and opinion. Okay, so this is pretty much the generic Marathon that's used. I mean, it looks great, eh? I think what pulls me to it at first is just how small the dial is, how everything's been shrunken in. The bezel takes a lot of precedence. I think the proportions are great. Makes it a very good-looking, just functional diver's tool. This is considered a pilot's or a diver's watch. That's the question. Issue diver's automatic. Tritium. Even has a tritium dial. I mean, geez, that is killer. Really nice-looking piece. Again, down to proportions. I love the small dial. Love the big bezel. You can tell that it's got that function behind it. Looks awesome. Let's see. Found it. Oh, geez, I'm sorry, I'm jumping. The thing I hate about these chats is that it just drops to the bottom and I can't catch up with everything else. 70s inspired watch do I like? Clive, the one watch that really jumps to my mind, as you mentioned that question, is the 1655. What I love so much about it is it just has that charm of that orange hand. It's so basic, so simple. Most people will just mistake it as a Seiko. And I think that's so charming. That's the watch that I just think off the top of my head when I think 70s. The Monaco is cool, but that's a bit later. Anyway, let's see. James Hoffman. Thoughts on long hands on your Smith's Everest? On the long hand. I think buying one too, but not sure if it will annoy me. Let's just pull it up. I've got one on the home screen here. I think the proportions are great. This main hand looks awesome. The short hand, they really hit it out the park. If you just go into Google and look up some images of the Smith's pieces, you'll see that they are, it's just gorgeous. Easy to wear. Trust me, you won't be disappointed with it. That's all I can say. Simple, damn it, Google Chrome. Simple, easy to read, easy to wear. I love the long hand. There's actually nothing I can fault with the watch. I will be doing a review on it in the future. Don't worry about that. Citizen ProMaster as an affordable SA air gunner. I like your name, SA air gunner. Let's see, Citizen ProMaster. ProMaster. Did you say diver? Geez, I'm getting a lot of questions coming in. I'm missing them. Sorry, guys. Geez, if you give me any watch on an olive drab with an olive drab finish, I'm down. Like really, when it comes to an everyday wearing watch, I think olive as a color to wear looks superb. So yeah, I would say it's a cool looking watch. Love the combination. Give me anything in olive and I'll say yes to it. I think it's awesome. Found it in this capital. Reading a great book, Chasing Time. You know, one day I'd love to publish a book about the art and design of watches. That would be a really cool thing. Tudor Black Bay Heritage. Oh, geez, I hate these chat. Okay, I just saw a super chat from Dan Radke. Thank you. Thoughts on hormones in chicken? The weight loss. Yeah, I mean, ketogenic diet. All I can say. I think if people can understand that butter and cholesterol and everything they've been told about saturated fat is a lie, I think it'll make the world a better place. That's all I can say. Cut out the carbohydrates, cut out the sugar, and your life will be changed. Black Bay Heritage, I'm pulling up. You know, Tudor has a really nice lineup of pieces. What they've managed to do is awesome. I think the variety that they offer is great. What is one that really stands out to me? I think the Harrods edition stands out the most. Fun fact, if anyone's been watching the rugby lately, Tudor is sponsoring the event, and you basically see every line judge, every ref wearing a chronograph. How cool would it be just be given one of these to wear? So it's quite nice, very good marketing. And I know the All Blacks are very popular with, if anyone knows anything about rugby, All Blacks is the New Zealand rugby team. They all have Tudor sponsoring them, which is a bit unfair when you think about it that, this is something they just released actually. In support of the All Blacks, they released a fully PVD version. That looks so cool. I mean, type 1 if you agree how cool that thing looks, all black. I think it looks great. Let's see. Oh, geez, I missed so many comments. I'm just going to try and catch up with the ones below. Tom Austin, thank you. Thank you for joining. Really appreciate it, man. It's awesome. And you got up at 5 in the morning to watch this. Really appreciate it, man. Experience in industrial design. Tell me what you think of the Longines Heritage Chronograph without pulling my taffy. Okay, Brute, I will get to it now. Let's see, IWC Portuguese Perpetual. The Portuguese has some strange proportions. I think the vintage ones were quite charming. The new ones are strange. How much to eat a pizza online? Clive, the last time I ate a pizza, I think it was about 2 years ago. And it's just because I feel so ill after eating one that I just don't do it at all. I'm like, I eat a very banal and boring diet, but I just know that it's fuel and it's going to get me to the next meal. And that's like all that matters. 72-ounce steak, crappy luxury, I would go for that any day. RS Diver 65. So I see there's a lot of ones here. I think this looks so cool. Some watches just kill it in PVD. I think this one just does it. Check the red accents on the chronograph hand and on the, so nice. Tudor has some amazing stuff. I really enjoy the steel and gold chronograph that they brought out, but you know, I think the all black version really has a nice character to it. Let's see, any more chats? Prutes, thank you so much, man. I really, really appreciate it. The comments are awesome. Let's see, am I missing anything? So IWC Portuguese, there was another question, RS65. I want to get this watch up because this little guy is a gem. RS has done some cool things. And for those asking, I did a video about their new Pilot watch. I wasn't paid to promote anything. I've never been paid by a brand to promote them. I do it as hard as it is for people to believe, purely out of the goodness of my heart. Like if I like something and I think it's interesting, I will mention it on the page. Fauzi is in the house. Thank you, Fauzi. Thank you for joining us. This little RS65, I think, is such a charming watch. For a first watch for someone, I think it's great. Love the unique numeral layout. The lume and everything about it's nice and clean. Very simple, nice size. Again, I'm talking as someone who has a fairly average sized wrist. I think the RS65 is a great, great watch for a first piece. Did you say Rowan Atkinson wears a Vacheron GMT? What does Rowan Atkinson wear? I used to know what he wore, but I've lost it. Just jumped. Just trying to catch up with the rest of these. We need to state of the collection. Guys, I tell you, when I say that my collection sucks, it really sucks. I really love homage watches. That's always been my thing. That's how I began the channel a long time ago. And I don't have one luxury watch worth showing. Probably the best watch that I have at the moment is this little Smith's Everest. Love to make a change. I'd love to like grow the channel and grow the audience to a point where I will be able to get a really cool first watch. And it's coming to that decision. What I've loved so much about doing this, writing about watch design, is that I've been able to sort of factor in what I like and what I don't like. So one of these days, I would love to just premiere a really cool watch, something simple. I don't want anything big and like, just an Explorer or something that has a nice character to it. Would be really nice. And it's hard to, the first thing when you think of industrial design, you think, okay, this guy must probably like Nomos, for example. But for me, I just think there's so much opportunity for other pieces out there. Industrial designers are all about simplistic and Bauhaus and minimalist and Apple design and all of this stuff. But for me, someone who's quite a genuine watch enthusiast who just loves the art and design of pieces, there's so much more opportunity. I did a video about Nomos a while ago and specified that Bauhaus established watch design. And from it, we have basically seen everything that stemmed from it. Like we see this Tudor. This Tudor incorporates Bauhaus principles without question. Triangles, circles, squares, it's got it all. And when you kind of think that Bauhaus was established so long ago, but practically every watch we like has that kind of element. You look at the Jacquet Dro, for example. This definitely doesn't have Bauhaus elements to it. But most of the sports watches we see, for example, Audemars Piguet, Royal Oaks, Nautilus, Mondane Swiss Railway watch. Yeah, it's another example of what that someone would expect me to have. But for me, it just doesn't do it. I couldn't wear one, which is kind of why I've enjoyed looking at field watches, because they have that blend of function and form and everything in between. Gorgeous design. It's 100 years old. It's amazing history behind the watch, but at the same time, there's so much more to offer on the market nowadays. Just look at the IWC Mark 11 again for reference. That is it just hits every nail on the head. 60s inspired design, numerals, batons, the whole deal. Gorgeous piece. So let's see what else. Rolex Explorer is a perfect one to watch. I think so too, Justin Bailey. I think it has such a draw to it because it's basic, it's simple. It's very, it's a pity that it's so cliche, if we had to say it. But at the same time, it just has everything that you would want for an everyday wearing watch. It doesn't scream, it doesn't express itself. It's very subtle, but at the same time, it's cool. Actually, I've been writing about the JLC Reverso. Depending how the week goes next week, I'm going to bring it out. When we're talking about dress watches, Archie Luxury has been the one who's promoted this watch the most by far. I don't think anyone can deny that. It's a stunning looking watch. And the history behind it as well. It doesn't have the same kind of history as others. It wasn't a watch demanded for because it needed to be military and everything else. But just the draw that it has now as a retro modern piece, it's lasted so long because the mechanics behind it are superb. The way the Reverso system works is just clean and genius. Actually, it's a genius design by a French engineer. Long story, we will get to that in the video. So simple, got rounded off corners, rounded off edges, still keeps that rectangular form, but it's awesome. There's some mentioning about SBGs and standard Seiko pieces. The Saab, let's see the Saab 30035. Saab, well, that's brilliant. It's a nice looking piece. I can't say that Seiko has really grabbed me with their watches. Again, the one watch that I would be drawn to is the Peacock, just because it's so unique and different. I don't know. I think what kind of cuts in for me is that you have these very nice Alpha style dress watch hands, and then you have these retro 70s styled batons that don't really draw me as much. There's a question about the Stowa Marine Classic. Stowa has an interesting history. Let's see. It's cool. I really dig it. 36 mil is great. But again, I think the inspiration for this watch came from Longines and their pilot watch that they gave to the RAF. I mentioned it earlier in the stream. JT, don't stop this live stream. Yeah, I see. I don't want to drive him nuts. That's the thing, though. I mean, I'm doing this because I'm enjoying it, but I don't want to get in the way of someone else preparing it. Because I know he's been doing this far longer. You know, we're all jumping onto the train to create live streams, and I definitely don't want to interfere with this stuff. Clive. Oh, Clive. You know, I'll maybe 20 minutes, maybe another 20 minutes, and then I'll call it a night. The Tribute 31, Thomas Burnett, absolutely. You've got good taste, my friend. The Tribute to 1931 Reverso. I mean, hell's bells. You want a cool watch that just, what I love, I've said this before, is that the Reverso is the enthusiast watch. You walk into a room, you see someone with a Reverso, you just know he's not just a guy who knows, he just has a watch. He knows about watches. He knows the history. He probably knows where this watch originated from. It starts a great conversation. Navy blue, and I much prefer Reversos with the batons. I think they look great with the needle hands. I mean, gosh, gorgeous looking watch. Nice and thin, simple. Yeah, Clive super chatting. Thank you, Clive, for the super chat. I know you don't. I know you don't super chat, so it's quite a rare occasion, guys. I think we've seen it here first. Thank you, Clive. Really dig it, and the size, just the thickness of the case. You know, what would you guys think if I got a Reverso as a first watch? Just a simple Tribute to 31. I mean, that's quite an heirloom piece. I think it's gorgeous. Check out Geordie the Time Teller. He continually promotes the JLC Reverso, reaching. Yeah, and I mean, there's absolutely nothing I can say against it. Just looking at the design of the watch, let's just pull on the design goggles for a second. What is so charming about it? When we compare this to the Cartier Tank, actually, that's the watch that's most commonly compared against. The issue with it is that, well, the great thing about this watch is that it has that vertical aesthetic, the rectangular case, very retro, very 30s. But the way they've been able to round off everything is what gives it that modern touch. I think if the watch was actually very rectangular and straight, there'd be a problem when it comes to the finishing. But the fact that it's rounded and curved, I don't know, I get the feeling of Audi when I look at this watch. It has that sort of Audi aesthetic behind it. It's just gorgeous. Stunning looking pieces. I think they're great. Any more suggestions of other pieces? Master Control sector date. Ant G, good question. Let's see. JLC Master Control. Sector. And that's a sector dial, yeah. I don't know. I have a few reservations with the watch. One thing I do like is the blend of the lovely brushed finish with the polish of the case. I think it's gorgeous, nice and clean. But overall, another thing that's great is that they bothered to actually color the date window the same as the baton, the minute track, nice and clean. I don't know. It definitely appeals to a certain person. It's not a watch that really appeals to me, but I think JLC has so much to offer. I actually much prefer the Chronograph. I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts on that. I think the Chronograph is a much better idea. Love the needle hands that are hollow, don't have any lume in them. Easy to read the Chronograph at a glance. Yes, gorgeous. Proots, let's see. Claiming you would discuss the Longines Heritage 1940 Chronograph. Okay, let's do it. 1940 Longines Chronograph. I would imagine we'd have a good understanding, a good idea of what it would look like. Oh, that's pretty, hey? That is a gorgeous looking watch. Love the dial. Love it. It looks so nice and clean. Really simple. Really, really cool. I like it. Like the finishing. Don't know so much about the pushes, though. The pushes sort of take you away from the vintage feel. You know, it looks more like a 70s inspiration, those kinds of pushes. Let's see it on the wrist of someone. Not bad, but I don't like the pushes. I don't know. I've decided. It looks like someone decided to amalgamate a Tag Heuer Monaco into the mix and give it a 70s touch. Love the silver dial, though. This is a very good suggestion. Thank you, Proots, for it. Looks great. Let's see what else is going on. Thank you so much for the super chat. Ducote. Oh, geez, I'm terrible with names. I just picked up a Sin 103. There's been a lot of talk about Sin watches. The 103 seems to be a hot favorite. And oh geez, this is the I've looked at this before. This is a stunning watch. Really cool. The chronograph feature. It's very similar to is it the 104 that has that just the standard basic layout? I'm getting mixed up with my Zin references. This looks great. Really built for the tool aesthetic. Really nice and clean. Love it. It has that military feel. Again, what they do so well here is the fact that the date window blends with the dial. Nice and clean. White on black. Simple, easy to read. It looks great. Good, very good purchase. Very good idea. Don't know so much about the orange hand. I don't think that works as well as just the clean, simple, plain. Can't go wrong with that. It looks awesome. Very nice character. 73 math. I have an issue with date window on that watch. I agree with the chrono. Yeah. Let's see. How would you critique the dial design of this watch? Lange Zone, Lange 1, time zone, no name. Good question. You're giving me some good questions, no name. Be nice to know your name. Let's see. Lange 1, time zone. I do know the watch. When I did the review about the Lange 1. So what I've said about the Lange 1 is it's very attractive. The design falls into the golden ratio. I did a video about it. I think I titled it something like, "Why is the Lange 1 considered perfect?" The design of the Lange 1. And it's all to do with the fact that these dials, everything's balanced. I draw out all sorts of bizarre triangles and things around it to make sense of the dial. And this is a little bit much. I think the standard Lange 1 has a bit more of a ease to it. This looks a little bit too complicated. But again, it's down to personal preference. This wouldn't be a watch that would appeal to me. I'm not such a fan of offset, this and that. But if someone who wants a time zone watch, I don't know. I think there are better options out there, personally. I don't think, the Lange 1 has a draw to a very certain person. And the time zone is just another thing on top of it that just, it hits you with all the details on the dial. I can't even tell how you would read it, actually. It's very difficult. I would imagine, magic mouse. I would imagine this has to do with the power reserve. This is a second time zone. I really don't know. I don't know how to read it. That kind of thing bugs me. Also not such a fan of small dials, but I mean, that's another story. Lange 1 is a gorgeous watch, so unique. I think for 1815, if I wanted a Lange, it would be 1815, absolutely. 1815 chronograph, just the standard dress watch. The numerals, the layout is so clean. And I mean, if you really want to get stupid, you have the annual calendar. I mean, that is gorgeous. So clean and basic. But again, dress watches aren't really my forte. I much prefer the simple nature of more of a sports watch, personally. That might change with age. 1815 chronograph is just a killer. Looks so clean. Let's see. Yeah, anyway, I think I should wrap it up, guys. What time are we hitting? Let's say another 5 minutes till 25 past, and then I'll call it a night. Okay. Any more suggestions on watches to look at, or is that us for the evening? The Zeitwerk jump hour. Yeah, you guys can ditch. You can ditch and go and check out the Pontiff now. I'm sorry for keeping you guys. I should have ended at 1, but it's now 20 past. It's crazy. I mean, the time just flies. But then there comes a point, I think this last hour sort of like hits you that you've been doing this for 2 hours and you need a break. IWC, Little Red Seconds Hand. Let's have a look. No name. Thank you for the suggestion. But guys, really, if you'd like to bail on me, I'll just thank you all for being a part of this, for engaging with the chat. I think it's so important. It's great. I'd be very interested in knowing if you guys would like more of this next week. I'm very keen to chat with you guys. I love it. I just love the conversation, love the dialogue. The engagement is great. It's gorgeous. I love the PVD on this watch. I think it looks awesome with the sailcloth style strap. The red highlights are nice. It's not the easiest watch to read, which is strange because it is a pilot watch. You know, you've got this chronograph function in the center. The date, I don't really like this date where it's got 3 elements. It's better if it's just a simple window, you know. But again, if you guys would like to email me, it's in the about section of my page. So if you'd like to chat, if you'd like to ask me anything, that'd be great. I don't know how soon I'll be able to reply, but I will get to you eventually. Curtis, I have a Reverso Grand 976 perfect watch. Oh, that's awesome. It's too cool. So some watches really look good with PVD. And this is another example that looks superb. I think it's to do with the strap. The integration looks great. Not such a fan of the polished parts of the pushes and everything else, but overall, nice and clean. What alcohol do I have on keto? Just whiskey. Yeah, you see, once you get to a point in the diet where when your body knows that ketosis is important and that fat needs to be used, you can pretty much eat whatever you want because your body can understand that there's no barrier between what you're putting in and what you're using. So yeah, pretty much drink anything I want. You know, once you've been following the diet for about 6 months, you can pretty much go anywhere with what you want to eat. I'm also quite young. You know, I'm in my mid-20s, so my metabolism's pretty good and everything else. IWC Top Gun. Good question, Clive. I want to close off the stream. What did I say? 5 minutes. At 25 past, I'll be ending this. I think it's now decided. So it's. I'm trying to remember. It's just the standard Flieger. I think it looks cool. IWC does some interesting stuff. I'm not so much of a fan of when they reduce the numeral layout on the watch. I don't think it's as nice as a watch that has a fully finished. I mean, that looks so much cleaner. It'd be nice if they had a 3 there, but you get the drift. I think for a pilot watch, you want it to be as legible as possible. You want it to look like, I mean, that's a better example. You want it to look like a watch that has that that dial from an airplane or from a, you know, any kind of utilitarian vehicle, let's say. There's a super chat here by Neo. Neo, you're awesome. I'm sorry for not getting back to you in the emails. I'm supposed to be giving you email addresses and really apologize. Love your Zenith, by the way. Monsignor Neo has an awesome Zenith, just the standard, what is it? Just the 38 mil El Primero. Love the watch. I mean, that is just such a cracking watch. Love the story. It was a great video to do the other week. Thomas Burnett, thank you so much, man. You are such a gent. I promise to get back to you in the emails, and I will be doing a collection review of yours soon. But guys, I think I need to call it an evening before it gets too out of hand. There's lots. John Mayer. There's all kinds of ridiculous questions going on here. Comments. All American. Yeah. I think I'll call it a night. I think I will. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to close these windows and get up the little Smith's Everest again. Love it. So we didn't really talk just about field watches tonight. I kind of like the theme and everything else. It was nice to just jump between Patek and Rolex and the whole deal. That's kind of what we do here, just sort of like jump around and do whatever. But I will thank you all so much for joining. I love this interaction. This engagement is great. You guys make this so cool. And I hope to do it again. We can talk about another theme next week and just keep it going. It's my time when I can just reach out and chat to you all. Talk about field watches now. No, Clive, you had your chance. I've discussed field watches at length this evening. Sorry, Clive, you blew it. But guys, thank you all so much for joining again. It means a lot. I love the interaction. It's a time when I can just sit back and just engage with you and just chat about all things watches and everything else. So yeah, we can talk about ketogenic diet at a later stage if you're interested. Lots of stories about that. Anyway, thank you so much, guys. We're almost about to hit 25 past. I think it's the time to end. So maybe see you next week. I'll let you know in the community page. Please follow the community page. That's where I tend to post every day or so. And yeah, it's a dream. It's so nice chatting to all you guys. Really do appreciate it. So thank you all for joining again. I'm going to have a shower and hit the hay. Thank you, everyone. Cheers for now. See you in the next one.